Most people would think that Lockheed Martin is a predominantly white male company, but in reality, our commitment to bringing diverse candidates into the workforce is really a key pillar to our leadership team, as well as not even diversity of candidates, but diversity of thought. And that really helps drive our innovative solutions to our customers.
I like to create an environment where people feel that they can bring the best thing about themselves to work. And that's actually part of the reason I really love our team, because it allows us to not be restricted by traditional organizational structures.
You get to be a part of projects that no one else is working on. You get to have an inside look at technologies that very few companies and industries are really developing. My work directly impacts the military community and their ability to be effective soldiers in war. The technologies that we give them will be able to complete their missions in the effectiveness that they need, and that they can be brought home, back to their country, back to their family.
I feel a sense of impact because I know exactly how our products can be applied, and it's not the same thing as someone's going to walk around with a Lockheed Martin product in their hand, but we're creating technologies that have never been seen by anyone today. So even if you are worried that what you're impacting today, maybe you don't see someone using it tomorrow, just realize that you are literally making an impact that will change the course of technology for life.
Good morning, and welcome to A Tribute to Service, Community, Country, and Humanity. A tremendous thank you to Lockheed Martin for sponsoring this day of service and kicking it off with the great video we just saw. The voices of the variety of people who work at Lockheed Martin demonstrate the diversity needed to take on today and tomorrow's challenges. Today, we are paying tribute to the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by highlighting the accomplishments of Black Americans in the aviation and aerospace community. We believe the messages we will hear today and the exchange of ideas we will engage in will enrich our lives. It is our sincere hope at AIAA that it also prompts each of us to recommit ourselves to ensuring opportunities are available for everyone to participate and to excel. Please allow me to read the poem commonly thought to be an inspiration to Dr. King, I Dream a World by Langston Hughes. I dream a world. I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. Where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world. The idea of our unique event today was born from the creative partnership between the Aerospace Special Interest Group of the National Society of Black Engineers and AIAA. A small group from both organizations recognized how science and technology intersect with the themes of serving our community, our country, and humanity. Their work led to the impressive lineup of speakers and features we will enjoy today. They also invited partner organizations to join in and add vital elements to the program, including the Legacy Bridges STEM Academy, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and the University of Texas at Dallas. For the past week, many of us have been attending the 2021 SciTech Forum, which is a virtual event focused on accelerating innovation through diversity. We have paused SciTech 2021 to honor the intent of this national holiday. We will continue with the final 3 days tomorrow. Our first feature is the chance to meet Virginia Ollie, the co-founder of Ben's Chili Bowl restaurant in Washington, D.C. Mrs. Ollie worked with her late husband, Ben, to make Ben's Chili Bowl a mainstay of the Black community and a gathering place for everyone for the past 62 years. Mrs. Ollie took a moment to chat with us a few weeks ago. We hope you enjoy this video.
So welcome Welcome back to Ben's Kitchen. Look who we have with us today. We missed you guys this year. The pandemic has made it a very, very unique year. But we're happy to join you at your retreat and as we celebrate Dr. King for his birthday. You guys probably have been here, all of you may have been here before, but if you haven't, we want to give you a little bit of history about Ben's and give you the history of how the half smoke come to be. And this one over here we wanted to share is our latest. It's called our Big Ben Burger, and we added some people like the bacon on it, so you can get it with or without. But I want to have Mom tell us a little bit about the history. She started the Chili Bowl 62 years ago. We're honored to still have her with us, and it's been a privilege to see us, to see how she's passed on the torch to the next generation, and we're just honored to continue the legacy. So Mom, so tell us a little bit, you know, you started at 60 in 1958 and it was readily accepted by the community. What was that like for you?
Well, you know, I came here in Washington in 1952 when the city was still segregated. But we were able to find a beautiful location here on what we call Black Broadway. This street was known as Black Broadway back in those days because it was the entertainment center for African Americans. So Ben and I were able to find this wonderful location right here, 1213 U Street. And we thought we could just do, Ben had this special recipe for chili sauce, this homemade recipe for chili sauce. And he thought that a half smoke, putting it into a nice steamed hot dog bun with mustard onions and that homemade chili sauce would be a smashing dish.
Why a half smoke? And what is a half smoke for those of you who don't know?
Half smoke is really a breakfast sausage. It was used to breakfast time, but we just thought it would be perfect as a bun with the mustard onions and chili. And that's turned out to be the #1 item here in the Washington, D.C. area.
Right,
it's a signature dish.
Right, I love it. Okay.
Then we do it with mustard onions and chili.
And all the way.
And all the way, that's exactly right.
Some people like cheese on it, but all the ways mustard.
Yeah, exactly. So when we opened in 1958, we were just going into the civil rights movement. We were during the 60s. After Martin Luther King had an office, satellite office just 2 blocks away. So whenever he was in town, he would make it a point to stop at Ben's Chili Bowl and have a chili half smoke and talk a little bit about his dream and about the planning of the March on Washington, which took place in 1963.
Wow, that has been amazing.
It was amazing because so many people even President Kennedy said, I don't think you should have to have a lot of group of people because if anything happens, it would certainly affect your movement. He said, nothing's going to happen.
Wow, but you know what's amazing? We spoke about it. This was like ordinary life, ordinary day for you. And now it's history 63 years later. So you just sat with King, like you say, with all people walking the earth, and you just loved that this young man wanted to do something positive to change his people.
Not just for African Americans, but for all poor people.
Wow.
Help everybody.
That's pretty amazing.
Job equality, the housing issue was severe, and so he was on that road, and he worked very hard. So many years, marching, what he had to undergo in the summer. Even the folks that worked with him, it was tremendous an effort on his part, but he made a difference. In 1963, when he did that fabulous speech, I Have a Dream speech, in 1964, we passed the Civil Rights Act.
That's amazing.
In 1965, we passed the Voting Rights Act. All of that was a result of the work that Dr. King.
I remember you speaking of that day of the march. You got the bowl open, ran down there to hear the speech, and ran back because you knew it would be crowded after, because this is like a gathering place in town where everyone met from around the country. Tell us a little about that.
Well, the Ben's Chili Bowl was developed into a gathering place. We always wanted it to be a community-based place. And so even after that march, Dr. King and his folks that worked with him did meet again with President Kennedy. And then after that, they just pop by here for a little late night snack. We were here till 3 o'clock in the morning in those days.
That's
It was just a pleasure to know him, and to admire him, and to listen to him talk about his dreams. And then to live to see us have an African-American president. That was an amazing thing for me. I've been here 63 and a half years already.
I remember when we spoke up the day when he passed. It was like a chilling moment. It was one of the saddest days.
It was the saddest day. That evening, someone just burst into the door and said, Dr. King has been shot, but we don't believe that. We can't even accept that. And then someone else comes in with the same news, and someone else. We turn our way to little satellite radio on. Funny little radios that we had back in those days. And said, yeah, sure enough, Dr. King has been shot, and he's gone. People were in tears. People were crying. The sadness was overwhelming for everybody. And then as time went on, there's came to frustration. And the frustration turned to anger. And the uprising began that very night. That was very, very, very hard. It lasted for 3 nights. There was a curfew put in place. We were the only business that was allowed to remain open during that 3-night curfew. But it was a very sad time. The whole country was just broken up about this. And those uprisings took place all over the country. But it was a very hard-hit area here in our community.
I remember you saying that lasted for about 20 years until the subway opened. And then, next thing you knew, here comes the first African-American president. And 10 days before his election as president-elect, he walked in. What did that feel like to be listening to King and then watching that, one of his dreams?
At my age, we could not believe it was going to happen. We didn't know it would happen in our lifetime.
Wow.
But for President-elect Obama to come into the Chilliwack, it was his first place of eating out when he came to Washington. When he moved here, 10 days before his inauguration. And it was in the newspapers all over the country. Of course, that meant that folks from all over the country came to this historic event, this historic inauguration. They wanted to come today because of it. It was pretty amazing. There was a long line out there on that cold January day, all day long, just to come in. And we were just so proud of President Obama. Not only to come in today, but to be in office. It was just a dream come true. More than a dream come true for people my age.
Wow. What do you feel like when people against such as a Dave Chappelle or Kevin Howard or you name it, who's from other politicians and so forth, they come through. They say this place means something. We always say, gosh, we just wanted to start a small restaurant to pay kids' tuition. And here it became part of the community and the culture, it represents a culture. What is that? How do you feel?
It makes me proud to know that this is what our little Chilliwack is into a gathering place, a place for all people from all walks of life. And we always have the feeling that what we would do, we taught our employees, and we do treat everybody as family. We're all just people, and we treat everybody as family, and it's just a pleasure to serve everyone.
Well, you heard it from Mom. We hope to see you soon. I hope you guys have a wonderful retreat. And we miss you, and we hope to see you soon. Now, with this guy here, so this one, what's kind of cool is this is called our Big Ben burger. We have a special sauce. Normally, we would put the chili, as you know, on our chili cheeseburgers. But now, we created a Ben's special sauce. And on this burger, we have the lettuce, tomato, red onion, 6-ounce burger, which is antibiotic-free and hormone-free. It's 100% Angus beef, and a top with American cheese. And if you want bacon, we'll put 3 slices of bacon, and voila, you get that. And over here, we have the half smoke. Now, this is the one that everyone, still probably about 70% of our business is for this guy. And basically what it is, it's a half beef, half pork sausage, like Mom says. And normally what we would do, if you came and you ordered all the way, we would put a little mustard, And then the onions, a fresh diced onion on it. And this is the secret recipe chili sauce that's made in this kitchen here every day. You could, at 3, 4 in the morning, you could see like 14 pots of chili being made almost every day or every other day. And if it's busy, it's definitely every day. During the pandemic, business has slowed down, so it's we don't do it every day like we used to. But here you go. And if you want cheese, we can top it with cheese. So thank you for coming into Ben's Kitchen. We are honored that you asked us to invite us into your home. And until the next time, take care. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Lexi. Welcome to Ben's Kitchen. We're so honored that you invited us into your retreat this week. It's our pleasure to show you our secret kitchen. We have our chef, Logan, with us today. He runs things next door, and he's going to give you a sneak peek of the shrimp and grits. It's our world famous grits, and he's going to have to show you the whole entire recipe. So I'll let him take it from here. So, what are we doing?
All right, hi Danita.
Hello.
All right, so today we're going to be making our shrimp and grits. So first up we have these grits here. These are going to be a 3-cheese organic stone ground grit, so a much larger grit than a breakfast grit. It's going to be big enough and hard enough to stand up to the protein. That's going to be this awesome shrimp that we have here. This is a U1620 shrimp, so it's going to take between 16 or 20 shrimp to be a pound. So in here with the grits we have Parmesan cheese, white cheddar, and mascarpone cheese, which is a creamy Italian cheese. You can think of it almost like a sour cream, but just like a richer. And it leans a little bit on the sweet side quite easily. Just to give you the roundabout here before we get started, I'm going to heat up my pan. Get that bad boy preheated. It's a pretty big element for a small pan, but we'll be okay. I have butter, garlic, a 4-herb blend of basil, thyme, oregano, and rosemary. We have white onions. We have tomatoes. The super secret ingredient is going to be veggie stock mixed in with saffron. Yes, you heard it right. Saffron, which is more expensive by the pound than gold. So we're literally putting, not literally gold, but yes, the gold seasoning of saffron. Last but not least, we have some white wine. So now that my pan is hot, I'm just going to validate that it's hot here with my hand. All right. So we're going to make sure the pan is hot with the hand. And this looks easy, but most of the work is actually in the preparation. None of these things come out of a box other than the butter. Everything else, we either have to puree, we have to dice, we have to cut, we have to stew, and add a bunch of other ingredients to it. So first we're going to start with the butter. This is going to give us clarity on if the pan is actually ready or not. And it
Being a
is.
chef is such an art. I feel like it's literally art of plate.
I love it. I agree. So now we have garlic. We really want the garlic to present from a little bit more of the, think almost like a roasted garlic. That's why we get that in there first. And then the same thing with these herbs. The herbs that we have are called hard herbs. So they take a little bit more heat and time to release that full flavor. You can get that in there. Get all around there. This is a non-stick pan. Usually we don't use non-stick pans in the kitchen. So I'm just going to mash it up gently with the back of that there. And then we're going to get in our onions because we want them to be nice and caramelized. And then we'll just give those a little toss by themselves. We just want a little bit of brown on there, just a little bit. And then those are going to keep browning while we add our tomatoes. All right. And since we acknowledge that the wine has alcohol in it, we're going to add that next because we're going to want to cook that alcohol out, but we want all the flavor. So now that we're at this point, we basically only have enough salt and pepper to cover the shrimp. It doesn't need to be overbearing. So we're just going to sprinkle that lightly over the shrimp on one side. And then we're going to get these bad boys in here sauteing. Get a little stack action there so we know it's already done. We're gonna get our shrimp in. I like patterns, so I'm just gonna get them all in that same little pattern there. Boom. Hopefully it looks this pretty on the plate. All right, so our temperature's good. Slowly, the shrimp cook very fast. And then we're gonna give it a little bit more, just a little bit more heat. And then I'm gonna add the saffron broth. And this is gonna be 6 ounces of saffron broth. Veggie mix. Boom, boom. So we really just need this to come to like a low rolling boil. And as long as we flip the shrimp, that's pretty much it. So we're gonna go ahead and give this guy a little early shrimp flip. A little bit more heat there, which is fine. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna lightly salt the other side as well. And the good news is, I won't eat this in front of you. So our plates are super hot because we keep them in the window, probably around 350 degrees, but it's burning up hot. This guy's good. We're gonna go ahead and get the heat off. And I like to get ours in a vertical capacity. One. So I count from Sesame Street right now. So I won't count out loud.
That looks amazing.
One on top here. Shrimp down. All right. And then we're going to garnish with a little bit of our Parmesan cheese. And some green onion just to garnish and have a little green that pops. And after a quick wipe, we're ready for service on a super hot plate. And there you have it, Ben's Next Door, organic shrimp and grits.
Wow, what a story Mrs. Ollie has to share. And also, what a delicious cooking demonstration. I think we should all go. On behalf of everyone today, I want to thank Mrs. Ollie and Ben's Chili Bowl team for being a part of today's program. It is a tremendous addition, and we really appreciate their time and effort. Next, we will focus on humanity with a fireside chat on diversity and inspiration with friends and colleagues Charlie Bolden and General Les Lyles. It has been an honor throughout my career to work with both of these gentlemen. Charlie and Les have set the best examples for all of us to follow. This will be an enriching discussion, and there will be audience Q&A for all to join in. Our session moderator is Lindani Johnson. Lindani is Chief Engineer for our partner in this program, the Aerospace Special Interest Group of the National Society of Black Engineers. She specializes in defense and commercial aerospace system safety and reliability engineering. Currently, she serves as the Aircraft Segment System Safety Team Lead at Whisk Aero, a startup in the Bay Area of California. Lindani has worked with teams at Northrop Grumman, United Airlines, NASA, and more. Please welcome Lindani Johnson.
Thank you so much, Dan. I am so excited to be a part of this AIAA Cross NSBE collaboration on a beautiful Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I'd like to take a moment to thank Ms. Lexi Bruxon and her team at the AIAA and the NSBE Aerospace SIG leadership team for their efforts in putting this together. This program simply would not have worked without your efforts, so thank you so much for your time and creativity. As Dan mentioned, This next segment is a fireside chat, which I'll be moderating. The focus of this chat will be diversity, inspiration, and humanity. Let's have a dynamic discussion with two leaders of the Black community in aerospace and defense industries in our virtual living room. I'd like to remind the viewers that this is an interactive discussion. That's right, we want to include audience members in this fireside chat. So audience members are encouraged to type their questions for panelists in the chat box. I can address questions in the chat box in real time. So viewers, please don't hesitate to type your questions in the chat box and make your voice heard so that we can facilitate some community on this Martin Luther King Day. Let's kick off this fireside chat with some introductions of our wonderful speakers. I'll introduce our guests and give them a chance to say a few words. And following this, we'll have our fireside chat. I'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes for audience member Q&A, but I encourage our viewers to type their questions in the question box throughout the presentation because I can address them in real time. It is an absolute pleasure for me to welcome our guests to the virtual stage. Our panelists are pillars of the Black community and trailblazers of both the aerospace and defense industries. First, I'd like to welcome General Lester L. Lyles to our virtual living room for this fireside chat. General Lyles is the former Vice Chief of Staff, Commander, Air Force Materiel Command. Welcome, General Lyles, to our virtual stage.
Lindani, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Lindani. It's an honor to be here and welcome everybody. I can't think of a better forum and a better opportunity for all of us to engage in this discussion today. And it actually has, well, three significant things for me. One, AIAA, a great organization led by Dan Dumbacher. Two, NSBE and Lindani, thank you for being part of this collaboration. And then to celebrate this event on Martin Luther King birthday celebration, it really is quite an honor. And then a fourth thing for me, anytime I have an opportunity to be anywhere or to do anything with the Honorable Charles Bolton, I'm very, very honored to have that, had the pleasure of doing that. First, very quickly, I'm a native of Washington, D.C. So all the things that are going on, both in terms of Martin Luther King and the activities this week really have special significance for me. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I went to high school here in Washington, D.C. I turned down an appointment to go to the Air Force Academy and chose to go to Howard University, the historical Black college, which is now getting lots of notoriety thanks to our soon-to-be Vice President for the United States. I went to Howard University School of Engineering for 4 years, but I was also part of Air Force ROTC. So when I graduated with honors and graduated with military honors from ROTC, I went directly on behalf of the Air Force directly to graduate school at New Mexico State University. And then from there, I really started my Air Force career, starting coincidentally enough in the space realm, serving as a young space engineer in our Air Force Space and Missile Systems Organization at Los Angeles, California. And I won't talk about the rest of my career except perhaps to answer some questions, but I had an opportunity for 35 and a half years, as my wife reminds me, to spend time in research and development, logistics, science, and technology for literally that entire time. When I retired from the Air Force, which seemed very hard to believe was now 18 years ago, soon to be 18 years ago, since that time, I've served on corporate boards. I've had the opportunity to work with NASA, to work with the Air Force, to serve in President Obama's White House on his advisory board, to serve in the State Department, and to have an opportunity to continue serving with organizations like AIAA. So I've had a very, very rich, enjoyable career. Lots of things I've had a chance to do, but the greatest part is I had the opportunity to interact with young people. And just one last comment of why this day is so significant to me. I mentioned I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. Well, I will tell you that probably unlike most of you on this line, because none of you others are as old as I am, I was there as a young 17-year-old on the 28th of August, 1963, when Martin Luther King had his famous Freedom March and spoke those famous words of I Have a Dream, his what's called I Have a Dream speech. I was there. I was a brand new freshman at Howard University at the time. And I would tell you that was the most significant event I can think of to start my career and to make me think about the things that Martin Luther King stood for. Though I will tell people, I do this very honestly, I wasn't there because I was a 17-year-old with a social conscience. I was a young 17-year-old with raving hormones. With my neighbors in my community, I was down there because we knew there would be girls down there. But it didn't take too long for me to realize, hey, this is a historical moment. And when Martin Luther King started speaking on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, that really brought it home to me. And I have believed in him and everything he stood for since then. So, Lindani, let me stop right there and look forward to a fireside chat with Charlie Bolden.
Thank you so much, General Lyles, for telling us a bit about yourself. I'd like to introduce our second panelist. Welcome Major General Charles Bolden to our virtual living room. Major General Charles F. Bolden Jr. is a former astronaut and the 12th NASA administrator. Major General Bolden is also founder and CEO of the Charles F. Bolden Group. Welcome, Major General Bolden.
Lindani, it's great to be with you. And General Lyles, it's always awesome to be with you. And I was laughing because, as I listened, you told me some things I did not know about you, and a lot of parallels in our lives, but also some stark differences. I grew up in the segregated South, so I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, and I fell in love with a place called the United States Naval Academy when I was 12 years old, watching a program called Men of Annapolis in 7th grade, and I decided that's where I wanted to go to school. And so I worked on that diligently, could not get an appointment from my congressional representatives or my state senators at the time, so I ended up appealing to then President Lyndon Johnson. Never heard from the president, but subsequently had a visit from a Navy recruiter, and President Johnson sent a retired federal judge around the country looking for qualified young Black men to go to the service academies. And this was before women were allowed. And so the judge came to my high school, and I ended up getting an appointment through Congressman William Dawson from Chicago, Illinois. So this little kid from Columbia, South Carolina, entered the Naval Academy from Chicago, Illinois. But I say that to say, when I went there were two things I knew for certain I was not going to do. I was not quite as directed as you. Well, I'm going to go back to why you went to the Martin Luther King the march. I like the Naval Academy not because of anything that it stood for. I love the high collar uniforms, and the most important thing, though, for me with it as a young man with raging hormones was all the women from all over the Northeast came there every weekend. At least they did on the show, and so that was the place I wanted to go. And so I was not disappointed, however. But you were an honor graduate from Howard. I was not an honor graduate from the Naval Academy. I got through and I did well, but not with honors. But when I went there were two things I was not going to do. Absolutely not going to do. One was become a Marine, because I thought Marines were somewhat crazy. And growing up in South Carolina, I saw them come in and wreck my town all the time when they graduated from Parris Island. And the second thing I was not going to do under any circumstances was fly airplanes, because that was inherently dangerous. So those were the two things I knew when I went to the Naval Academy. And as I think we're going to talk about over the course of this next few minutes, what happened was I met people who influenced me and made impressions on me and caused me to change my mind. The first person at the Naval Academy was Major John Riley Love, who was a young infantry officer who was my first company officer. And he was like my dad. He was incredibly tough, but unbelievably fair. And I decided that I wanted to be like him. So when graduation rolled around, I said, I want to be like Major Love. I'm going to become an infantry officer, go to Vietnam, and defy the law of averages on the life expectancy of a second lieutenant. Nobody in my family liked that idea, but I did anyway. And I found out going through the basic school, 6 months of training to be a rifle platoon commander, that I hated crawling around in the mud. And I was looking for an alternative. I married my wife, Jackie, of now 53 years, 3 days after graduation. And she hated the fact that I'd gone to the Marine Corps, but absolutely hated the idea that I wanted to be an infantry officer, and kept trying to talk me into going to flight school. And I finally just gave up. And I said, I don't want to fly, but I want to live with you for the rest of my life. So we'll go to Pensacola. And I went got in the airplane the first time, fell in love with flying and never looked back. But it was people along the way who influenced me to select the type of aircraft I flew, the A6 Intruder. It was a guy who taught meteorology when I was going through advanced flight training in Kingsville, Texas, who talked about the mission. And then while I was a student, one of my instructors was another Marine, Peter B. Field, who later became the program manager for the F-18 program at Patuxent River, who talked about what it was really like to be a test pilot. No scarf hanging out the window, really, really demanding and precise. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do. So influenced by people all along the way. I've had an opportunity to meet and be influenced by people like you. Incredible to watch you work when I was the NASA administrator, particularly when you came and served as the head for the NASA Advisory Council, a personal counselor to me, actually, to keep me from doing dumb things as the administrator. So I think I'm going to stop there, Lindani, and let you go ahead so we can talk about some things of interest to people.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much for telling us a bit more about yourself. I wanted to remind the viewers that we can answer questions in real time, so don't hesitate to type your questions in the chat box. I already see a couple coming in, so that's great. I wanted to open this discussion with both of your thoughts on workforce diversity. And that's really what the focus of this fireside chat is. So the word diversity, in my opinion, gets thrown around a lot in today's world, to the point where it's almost a buzzword in today's society. So I'd like to know what diversity means to each of you. So Major General Bolden, you can respond to this next question first, and then I'll give General Lyles a chance to answer. So Major General Bolden, what do you feel is the role and importance of diversity in the workforce? And what are we doing right when it comes to diversity in the workforce?
You know, I think diversity is absolutely critical, and not for the reason that a lot of people frequently think. When I think of diversity, I'm not talking about race or gender. I include those, but most importantly for the success of an organization is diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. And it just so happens, you know, Lester Lyles went to Howard University, a historically Black college. I am very proud to say that my middle granddaughter, Kira Junae Bolden, has committed to go to Howard next year as a freshman and hopefully play soccer. And I'm unbelievably proud of her because unlike her dad, who followed me to the Naval Academy, and her mom, who graduated from the University of New South Wales in Australia, you know, Kira is going to have the Black experience. And I think it is really going to impact her life. But it's that experience that allows those students to come into the workplace with a different set of ideas than, say, somebody who went to Harvard or to Yale or somewhere else, just because of the experience they've lived. So I think the diversity of ideas that we seek in business and government and any other organized group comes from not just people of different races and cultures and gender and sexual persuasion, but most importantly from the ideas that they bring with them. Absolutely.
General Lyles, did you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, Lindani and Charlie, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And ironically, I have sort of a bookends, if you will, aspect of diversity. First, about 10 years ago, I was charged and asked by Congress to lead a major commission looking at leadership in the military. The late Congressman Elijah Cummings was the one who started this. And it was to answer the question from Congress, why haven't there been more women and minorities to get to the ranks of 3-star or 4-star in the United States military? Congress mandated by the Authorization Act a special commission to look at that subject. And I happened, as a retired 4-star, I was asked to lead that particular group, which was comprised of men and women from all the services, active duty, Guard, Reserve, academia, and also industry. We were called the Military Leadership Diversity Commission. And the first task that Congress asked us to do was to define diversity. And ironically, perhaps not ironically, the way we defined it was exactly what Charlie Bolden just talked about. It's not just ethnic and racial or religious backgrounds, it's all the skills and varieties and experiences that people can bring. That's the kind of diversity that's needed in the workforce for almost any sector you might mention. The other end of the bookend for me is, as you mentioned, Lindani, the term diversity is almost a cottage term now. Everybody uses it to describe things. I first heard the term diverse early in my Air Force career as something that actually convinced me to stay in the Air Force. It was back in May 1970. I was this young rocket engineer, as I mentioned, out of California. And in May 1970, there was an event that took place in this country, since that was still the Vietnam War days, where 4 students were killed at Kent State University in Ohio. And they were killed by National Guardsmen in response to what they thought was a riot going on or protesting. I was this young engineer, of course, out in California. And what struck me was how many of the other engineers and even senior people at that time thought those kids deserved what they got. They were such a conservative view, if you will. They thought it was funny. And to me, as again, somewhat of a more liberal background, if you will, I was shocked by that viewpoint. And I told myself right then, okay, I don't want to be part of this United States Air Force. When my commitment to the Air Force is over in 4 years, another 2 years, I'm going to get out and go do other things. I had a senior engineer, but a white gentleman's name was Roger Couteau, who was very quiet, very shy, never really said anything to me at all. But he pulled me aside and he said, please don't leave the Air Force. The Air Force needs diverse thoughts in everything that's going on and diverse views. And while you are shocked by this event, and some of us are, others of us are, the Air Force needs your experience and diverse thoughts and viewpoints on things. So please stay in the Air Force. And I did. And that led to the rest of my career. So I'm a big believer in diversity and everything that Charlie said and I mentioned earlier about what it offers. But to me, diverse viewpoint was what set me to stay in the Air Force, as spoken by a person who I didn't think was a mentor, but he turned out to be a great mentor.
And Donnie, can I mention one thing too? In trying to prepare for today, I went back and I looked at some of the things that Dr. King said. And one of them that struck me was, our lives begin to end the day we become silent on things that matter. I think it's most applicable today with what's going on in our nation's capital and around the world. General Laus mentioned heading a commission that was looking at the lack of leadership in the military among women and minorities. Guess what? That is an issue today. It's sort of like my daughter is a plastic surgeon here in the DC area, and her mentor going through medical school at the Baylor College of Medicine was Dr. Jim Phillips. And he lived his life trying to get the percentage of Blacks in medicine, in the medical field, above 6%. He practiced medicine for 40 some odd years, and when he left, the percentage was 6%. It's things like increasing the level of diversity in our organizations that is a very, very, very difficult task. But it takes, as Les said, it takes people like all of us sticking around, sticking to it, enduring whatever slings and arrows may come to make us better. To find that there were active duty and retired military involved in the siege of our capital last year was like a bullet to the heart to me, because, they were people with whom I have served and who I trusted with my life. And then to find, that they would do something like that was really difficult. So I think it's a real challenge for us. And by bringing diversity to our organizations and allowing everybody to hear those diverse thoughts, as General Laus said, I think is the only thing that's going to make us better.
Charlie, you reminded me of one thing, and it very much apropos to what you just stated. When I chaired that Military Leadership Diversity Commission, I mentioned we had wide representation, active duty, Guard, Reserve. Well, two of the individuals who were part of that commission at the time were a two-star Navy admiral by the name of Cecil Haney. He ended up becoming a four-star and ended up leading Strategic Command, really the command that protects the United States. There was also a two-star Marine whose name was Bob Neller. And Bob Neller became the Commandant of the Marine Corps, one of Charlie's bosses, if you will. I think Charlie had already left, but I don't think you were there under Bob Neller. But Bob became the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And I will say, even though he was a very conservative part of our commission, what he learned, what we discussed, what he imparted and gained from being part of that commission, I think helped him when he became the Commandant of the Marine Corps to be one of the champions for women in the Marine Corps as soon as he got into that leadership position. So just talking, just sharing diverse views really changes people's perspectives.
Right. So a few audience questions actually came in that I wanted to address on these topics. So this first one is for General Lyles. It says, as a military brat, I feel like I was exposed to a lot of different perspectives and diversity both overseas and stateside. Do you have any thoughts on the differences from a diversity perspective in the military versus the rest of your states? Thanks for the service.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Whoever asked the question, or thank your parents' service, since you said you're a military brat. I think Charlie hit on it when his comments. He mentioned that some of the problems we are facing today, we actually have in our military. Yes, military people have a reputation in the military for being sort of a natural place, if you will, to avoid prejudices and things of that nature. But those of us who know, and those of us who read and listen, know that the military has its own problems with those kind of things also. I am right now one of the advisors to our new Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General C.Q. Brown, who happens to be the first African American to be the leader of one of our military services. And he inherited from his predecessor, General Dave Goldfein, the Diversity and Inclusion Council for the United States Air Force, really trying to make sure that the Air Force is addressing all its challenges in terms of diversity and inclusion. Now, while there might not be the kinds of things we read about, like the attack on the Capitol last week, there are problems. And one of them, admittedly, was recognized in a document the Air Force put out about a month ago, talking about racial disparity in the military justice system for the United States Air Force. They've done a detailed study. I was part of that study, and recognized and pointed out that there's disparity in the way minorities have been treated in the military justice system than non-minorities. And they're trying to, one, eliminate the problem, but two, trying to get to the root cause and find out why so we can get rid of it. So my answer to the question is, yes, there are lots of great things with the military, but military leaders today recognize they also have a problem, and they're trying to make sure they're looking at them seriously and getting rid of them to better serve our country.
Thank you, General Lyles. We've got another question. We've got a question for General Bolden. How was working with the NASA administrations with regards to issues like diversity?
Oh boy, Lendani, it was awesome. I mentioned the fact that I was finally able to get General Lyles to come over. He's a busy man, in case you don't know it. And he was chairing an organization at the National Academies of Science called the Aeronautics and Space Engineering Board. And I asked him if he would come over and lead the NASA Advisory Council for a number of reasons. One was because of his expertise, but the most important for me was the fact that you had a renowned person of color from the military who was recognized worldwide for his expertise. And I felt that just having him there would send a tremendous message to the workforce and the technical community that serves NASA. And I still think that that's true. But working with NASA was awesome. There are two organizations that I love dearly and were really hard to leave, both of them. And I get weepy when I think about it. One was the Marine Corps. That was really, with all of its warts and faults and everything, leaving the Marine Corps active duty was very, very difficult. And it was the same thing stepping away from NASA. And I did that twice, leaving the astronaut office and then having to step down as the administrator because I was a political appointee, a presidential appointee, and I had to leave with the president. But when I came in, we really struggled to increase the amount of leadership of color, diverse leadership, women and minorities in NASA, because as most technical organizations, you see an abundance of Blacks and women in the lower ranks doing the work. But when you get to the decision making, it's like you walked out into the desert and there's this incredible void. And you wonder if they're good enough to do the major work of the organization and make the organization run, why are we not good enough to run it? And so we formed a diversity and inclusion council, and I became the diversity champion for the agency. And everybody in the agency, all 18,000 employees around the world, and all of our contractors knew that the administrator was the diversity champion for the agency. And then I asked the leaders in each of our 9 NASA centers around the country, I said, you know, you don't have to be the champion in your organization, but I want you to at least assign somebody who reports to you and can speak for you, because we've got to do a better job. And we brought in people who would help us bring disparate voices to this issue. And we wanted to hear from everybody. We wanted to, because, you know, like the military, we're an unbelievable mix of people, and everybody doesn't buy our act when we talk about diversity. In talking to General Berger, who is presently the Commandant of the Marine Corps, when first time I went in to talk to him and we talked about diversity, he said, look, I get it, but I've got Marines who don't. And they ask me all the time, what are we going to get from diversity? You know, why do we need to bring diversity to the Marine Corps? We're good. We're the world's best. So why do we need to add all these kinds of people? So he said, you know, I've got to be able to tell the story of what diversity does for us. And I think that's the same thing that General Lyles is talking about. It's when we allow people to sit around and talk and air their grievances and talk about why they don't like me, or why they're uncomfortable with me as a man of color leading them, then it's incumbent upon me to try to change their mind. And I can't do that by talking to them. I've got to do that through my actions. And so, you know, I've got to be a good leader. I've got to be someone that they grow to trust, and I've got to be someone that they want to be in their organization. Last story I'll tell you, when I was the commanding general of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, we had a saying, you know, and we started out, it was kind of BS, but when I left, I think we had realized this. We wanted to be the wing of choice in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has 3 active duty aviation wings. That's where all the aviation assets for the Marine Corps are. And the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing is kind of in what we call the warfighting MEF, Marine Expeditionary Force. But we wanted to have the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing be recognized as a place of excellence where everybody was recognized for their ability, not their color or not their race or gender or anything. And so we wanted to be the wing of choice. And I think when I left, not because of anything I did, but because of the incredible diverse leadership we had there, you know, we became the wing of choice for the Marine Corps. So you just have to work at it.
Sure. I've got another question that's perfect with this. So the next question is addressed to both of you. So working in the defense industry that is typically older white male led, in companies that have employee diversity resource groups, how do you win over those who don't want these changes? Those who are open to it are already members and are growing their awareness. It's the other 80% of folks that we need to bring to the table.
I'll try it, unless you were addressing it directly to General Lyles. I want to talk about a guy that really taught me a lot. He's a gentleman and he works for one of the sponsors of this program. And Dan Dunbacher, who you've already heard from, knows him incredibly well because he mentored both of us. And his name is Robert Lightfoot. Robert Lightfoot is he's a son of the South, born and raised in Alabama. Went to the University of Alabama, came out of there, and his first job was on the test stand down at Stennis Space Center in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. And Robert taught me more about Robert Lightfoot, who General Lyles knows very well. Robert taught me more about diversity than anybody else I've ever met, because he shared with me his experiences of being in that 80% that just didn't get it. And was brought to understand it through sitting and listening to people. And he told the story about a senior Black woman who was in his organization, and there was a job to be held, and a woman was among those that were most highly qualified, if not the most qualified. But he was about to, in fact, he took her out of the running because it involved a lot of travel and everything, and he was concerned about her ability to take care of her family and everything. And he said the Black woman supervisor kind of came in, closed the door. And Robert, if you're listening, you can forgive me for adding my color to this. But he said she closed the door and she looked at him. She said, "You don't have that option. That's not your decision. for whether or not she can take care of her family and do her job. Your job is to pick the most important person, and then you let them handle the rest of it. And he said he was taken aback because he had never looked at it. You know, he was being the typical white male, the dominant person in the organization who's going to tell everybody else what's the right thing to do. So Robert, if I screwed your story up, forgive me. But Robert had experiences like that had caused him to become an incredible leader. He led the Marshall Space Flight Center, and it was, I mean, it is one of the best centers we have today. And you would wonder, how can they have the types of diversity that they have at the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama? And it's because of leaders like Robert and people who followed him. So, I mean, you know, it's in that 80% that you find some of the best leaders that we have.
Well, Lindani, I agree with Charlie wholeheartedly. And I definitely agree about Robert Lightfoot. He's one of a kind and just a very, very unique individual and fantastic leader. And the word leader, I think, is very, very important, particularly in industry. One of the key things that we pointed out in this Military Leadership Diversity Commission report that I mentioned earlier is that the tone from the top really matters. The leadership really needs to expect and support diversity in any organization for it to succeed. There are lots of things that the grassroots can do, the employees themselves can do, but if the leadership doesn't support it and is not actively supporting it, it really, really makes a difference. There are so many stories along these lines, but I'll mention just one. Again, we were doing this commission, in looking at the military services. I thought for sure as an Air Force general that I'd find that the Air Force did better in terms of diversity than any other organizations. It turns out it was actually the United States Navy. And one of the reasons was because the Navy's leader, their chief naval operator, or chief of naval operations, the 4-star who led the Navy for the last several generations of around that time, was very actively supporting and making sure people knew about diversity in the organization. I love the fact that when Admiral Mike Mullins was the head of the Navy, and before he became
of the class of
chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullins used to have meetings with his senior leaders in the Navy, all the 4-stars, other 4-stars and 3-stars. And the first thing he would do was to look around the table and ask that leadership, which, as you might imagine, was all white males, what are you doing to support diversity in your organization? To tell all of them that he was holding them accountable to make sure they support diversity. And then he did something else that was very unique. He said, quit looking around the table and look around the back of the room, the aides and assistants that you've chosen as the young people you want to mentor to be the next or next after that leaders in the Navy. And what do you see? White males. And so he was pointing out that it's not just you around the table, it's every generation that needs to get that particular story. So getting the word out about leadership is very important. And I say that every time I interface with any industry, any company that I'm associated with that's trying to support diversity in their regards. If the leadership doesn't believe in it and his leadership is not championing it, it's not going to be as successful.
Thank you so much for your wisdom on that. I wanted to switch gears a little bit. So General Lyles, as a native of DC, you mentioned that you had a chance to actually see Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. Could you speak a little bit to why this is still relevant today?
Wow. Well, the dream, if you listen to or read the speech and look at every element of it, you'll see that the dream is not completely realized. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize the division and hatred that still exists in some segments of our population. It's sort of ironic that that riot mob that marched on the Capitol on the 6th of January went down the same route as the speech, the Freedom March that led to the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, and Martin Luther King's speech. And the hatred in people's eyes, the division in people's eyes still exists. The idea that Martin Luther King expressed in his speech, little Black kids and white kids would get together and join hands and do things as a team certainly didn't exist on the 6th of January. So to me, that speech still is very, very relevant in every aspect. And I ask people to, if you get a chance, to Google or go to YouTube, and don't just read the speech, listen to the speech on YouTube or through Google as spoken at Martin Luther King's own words. I actually did that this morning, not about that particular speech, but another speech that Martin Luther gave 6 months before that, 6 months before he was assassinated, in October of 1967. And he gave a speech that people call the street sweeper speech. And I talk about that a lot, about encouraging people that whatever they do, whatever career field that they are in, to be the best that they can be in their endeavors. And literally, whether they're called to be a street sweeper or an astronaut, be the best that you can be. Listen to that speech in its entirety in Martin Luther King's words, and it just really inspires you in every aspect.
You know, Lindani, I'll echo what General Lau said. I'll first of all join him in complimenting my classmate from the class of 1968 at the Naval Academy, Mike Mullen, Admiral Mullen, who I cannot speak as highly of him as General Lau's, but I agree with him, with General Lau's 100%. You know, like General Lau's, I went back and looked at some things that I thought might be useful to me for today. And one of the things I picked up was the Constitution of the United States, since that seems to be what everybody who came to town to riot and tear up the Capitol wanted to talk about defending last week. And it's interesting when you read the preamble to the Constitution. I'm not sure that that anybody who was marching could recite it for you. I had to learn it when I was growing up in segregated schools in South Carolina. And President Obama used to refer to a part of it all the time. But I think the opening words, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." The implication in that is that we aren't there yet, but we're constantly working on it. And President Obama used to remind us about that all the time when he was president. And I had the privilege to work for him as the NASA administrator. You know, we're an experiment. And it's like somebody said, Benjamin Franklin said, coming out of the Continental Congress, or the Constitutional Convention, I guess. And a woman asked him, you know, Mr. Franklin, what have we created, or what have we wrought? And he, a republic or a monarchy. And he said, a republic, if we can keep it. You know, this great experiment is very young. It's a lot older than most attempted democracies, but in terms of time on Earth, this is a very young nation and a very young democracy. And we got a long way to go to become a perfect union, but that's what we should all strive to do. And I think we should all use last week as a great example of what happens when people listen to voices that really don't have any clue what they're talking about, and they're guided by those voices without actually going out and reading or listening to things like General Lau said. Go out and listen to what people have really said. Don't depend on somebody else telling you what was said or what you should be doing. There are plenty of sources out there to help us understand what this Constitution is all about. And anybody who claims they know what the Founding Fathers intended doesn't have a clue. I'm not sure the Founding Fathers knew what they intended. You know, in the Broadway musical Hamilton, Hamilton goes and knocks on Aaron Burr's door in the middle of the night when he's challenged to try to present the Constitution and get it ratified. And he asked Aaron Burr to help him defend it, because Aaron Burr is his foremost attorney. And Aaron Burr says, "You're crazy." He said, "The Constitution's all messed up." And he asked him, you know, "Do you believe in it?" He said, "Yes, I do. But, you know, it may not make it. And so I don't want to be on the losing side. You know, I want to be on the winning side, and I want to make our Constitution the winner. But it takes all of us involved every single day to make that happen. It's important. It's really important for us."
Such wonderful insight. And I'm so glad you brought up musical Hamilton. It's amazing. I want to, there was a lot of audience questions that came in while you were talking. So I think I'm gonna start addressing those as we have a couple minutes left. So the first one says, "Go Navy. I'm interested in some of the obstacles that we don't think about from back in the day, i.e. not being able to get an appointment letter in South Carolina. that don't make it into the history books?
Well, it's I'll go back to General Lau's lesson about Admiral Mullen. I was a victim of, and I hate that term, but growing up in South Carolina, trying to get to the Naval Academy, the representatives, my representative, a guy by the name of Albert Watson, and my two senators, U.S. senators, were Olin D. Johnston and the venerable Strom Thurmond. And they made it very clear that they were not going to appoint a Black to the Naval Academy or any academy under any circumstances. And it's because, unlike Admiral Mullen, they were happy with seeing the people that were in training to be leaders of the nation remain all white. So, you know, those lessons from growing up helped me to understand that I've got to find a way to bring more diversity into the people sitting in, if you want to call it, the cheap seats, the people who are out there, you know, looking at what's going on so that they can learn how the organization runs and can become a part of it.
General Lyles, or did you want to respond to that as well?
Oh, no, I certainly agree. But one key point I think is very, very important, particularly for young people or anybody who's still growing up, still expanding in their careers and things like that. There's still an opportunity and a mandate to perform. Somebody may help you get into an academy. It may help you get into a particular job. I've had mentors who have helped me to get different places throughout my career. Almost all of them, literally all of them, unsolicited. They did it on their own, if you will. But the expectation was that I would still perform. And so people still have to realize if somebody helps you to get somewhere, or if you have a mentor, you still have a responsibility to show what you can do and to prove what you can do and to be the best that you can be. Some people forget about that. They think that somebody is going to help them to get someplace and that's going to be it, and everything's going to happen for them. You still have to do things for yourself. And there's nothing better than to show people who you are and what you are than to show the excellence that you can bring to a job.
Absolutely.
Donnie, there's one other thing real quickly, you know, we can also learn from negative examples. I was taught that you should always have a ledger, whether it's literal or figurative. And you have on one side of the page good things and good role models, and on the other side of the page bad role models, because I think you learn equally from both. There are people who were leaders for me that I said I don't ever want to be like them, but you have to remember what they're like. I hated the Naval Academy when I finally got there. I thought it was tough. I thought it was unfair. I thought I faced discrimination, and I wanted to go home. And I cried to my mom and dad every weekend during my plebe year saying, I want to come home. My dad, who was my high school football teacher, said, you know, just hang in there one more week. And I hung in there for 52 weeks. But the thing that made me decide I was going to stay was two of my company mates coming in and telling me I wasn't going to last. I wasn't going to make it through the Naval Academy. One was from South Carolina, one was from Alabama. And I asked them what made them think I wasn't going to get through. And they said, we're not going to let you get through. And when they walked out of my room, I changed my mind. I said, look, I may not like this place. I am not leaving. They are not going to drive me out of here. So using negative examples is just as good as the positive ones, I think.
I think we've got time for one more quick question. So can you give examples of how diversity brought innovation to bear throughout your career?
Well, as I think about it, Lindani, my opportunity to be part of the Star Wars program, to lead the Star Wars program, missile defense program, literally having a diverse group of individuals, both in terms of skills, but also background, was the key to why that organization is so innovative, not just in terms of the technology, but even how it does business and how it brings different perspectives to solve problems. If we had depended on just one entity, even one company, to get things done, it would never have been as successful, certainly in the kinds of technical challenges that we have. So I'll just mention that literally in everything associated with missile defense, in the technology, it was diverse perspectives, companies, people, and organizations that made that successful. And then I can't help from mentioning a late friend of mine, Claude Bolton. He was a retired two-star, Air Force two-star, test pilot, scientist, engineer. He ended up being the head of research and development for the Army. He was asked to take on the Army head of research and development. Charlie was literally the father of the F-22 fighter. When I was in as a young officer in the F-16 program office, Charlie was next door developing the next generation fighter. Nobody knew that at the time, but literally everything you can see in that current generation of stealth fighter for the United States Air Force, and literally for other people, if you will, is the result of Claude Bolden, and the things that he did to make sure that technology had innovation throughout every aspect of it.
Well, Major General Bolden, would you like to respond?
I will just echo what he said about Claude. Claude was a dear friend, and Claude also supported us when I was the NASA administrator. And I tell you, when we lost him, we lost a tremendous human being and an incredible asset for leadership. I always wondered how he got everything done that he did in a day. He was an incredible individual.
Yeah, that and run marathons. And by the way, if I didn't say it, it was obvious. Claude was African-American.
Well, I would like to thank Major General Charlie Bolden and General Lyles for joining me for this wonderful, intriguing MLK Day fireside chat surrounding diversity, humanity, and inspiration. Our panelists gave us some of their wisdom and shed some light on some difficult community issues. So thank you so much for joining me, Major General Bolden, and thank you for your time, General Lyles. We've got a great program planned for all of you coming up. And this concludes today's fireside chat.
Donnie, thank you. Great job. Thank you very much. Charlie.
Fantastic.
My best to you.
Good to be with you. Thank you very much. Good luck there, Joy.
Thank you, Major General.
Thank you, Donnie Johnson, Major General Bolden, and General Lyles for that amazing discussion. My name is Kaylin Borders, and I'm an undergraduate aerospace engineering student at San Diego State University and a native of the DC area. I am also one of the Diversity and Inclusion Chairs for the Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Joy Spraggins, who will moderate the Focus on the Country, airing the documentary, Red Tail Angels, the story and legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. Joy C. Spraggins is recognized as a legacy leadership expert in global diversity, inclusion, leadership development, communications, workforce development, public policy, NASA STEM, and community engagement. She is the president of Legacy Pathways and Footprints and founder of Legacy Bridges STEM Academy, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit NASA Legends and Trailblazers STEM Institute and Ecosystem. Dr. Spraggins is also recognized by her trademark brand name, Dr. Joy. Her passion and mission are to inspire the growth of legacy leaders and the next generation of NASA-related aviation and aeronautics, aerospace engineers, and International Space Station researchers. In 2018, Dr. Joy created a legacy leadership, NASA Legends and Trailblazers, Women Pioneers and Innovators, documented original Tuskegee Airmen and veterans, diversity and inclusion career and technical STEM education and workforce development training program designed to preserve and enhance knowledge transfer that stimulates job creation. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Joy Spraggins.
Good morning, and thank you, Kaylin, for that excellent introduction. I am so honored to join you today, and especially honored to listen to the fire chat by Major General Charlie Bolden and General Lyles. To build upon the legacy of diversity and inclusion and how everyone has came together to make a difference in the world, we'd like to show you a documentary on Focus on Our Country. In a moment, we're going to be airing the U.S. Air Force documentary, The Red Tail Angels, the story and legacy of the World War II Tuskegee Airmen and their impact on the world and society. And then thereafter, we are going to be joined by two extraordinary Red Tail legends that will share with you their experience and the triumph that they had to go through to overcome. victory. So ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the Red Tail Angel documentary.
Tuskegee Airmen was an all-black fighter squadron that fought in World War II.
Well, when I was in the 6th grade, I had a love affair with an airplane.
And to begin with, they're pioneers. So it's not like they had something like me where I can draw on somebody who did it before me. They were the first.
The kids used to call me, "Hey, Lindbergh, Lindbergh." Harold, they won't even let you wash that airplane.
Leading this group of pioneering aviators into history's waiting arms was a 1936 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., who was also one of the first 5 graduates to earn aviation wings at Tuskegee Army Airfield in March of 1942.
If it were not for Noel Parrish, the Tuskegee Airmen wouldn't have got into combat. But if it were not for Ben Davis, the Tuskegee Airmen would not have succeeded in combat.
Benjamin O. Davis, other than my father and grandfather and a couple of priests and a couple of people that have mentored me, he to me was the quintessential gentleman / disciplinarian / perfectionist.
He was one of the finest men I've ever met in my life. The fact that we were as successful as we were, he really prepared us for that transition.
Well, you have to look at his history and realize that when he graduated from West Point in '36, he wanted to be a pilot and was told no because they had no black units. In other words, they didn't want a white soldier saluting a black officer. Another way to look at it. But it turned out that he got his opportunity with the flying with the very first class that started training at Tuskegee in 1941.
As Davis led this monumental and historic deployment into the theater of war, it did not go unnoticed as a particular segment of the population held its collective breath in anticipation of the outcome.
It was very apparent, not only to me, but to the people in the 99, that they held in their hands, once they left Tuskegee, the future of blacks in the Army Air Force.
They weren't just pilots, they were symbols of groundbreaking, door-opening hope, basically. They represented hope in our country.
They had to prove themselves, because if they let this opportunity slip, it could be another 100 years before anybody gave African Americans or any other minorities, for that matter, a chance to actually prove themselves. And so for them, you know, they had to go at it like everything was on the line. And indeed, I think it was. I think if they hadn't succeeded where they were, I wouldn't be here today. And if I was in the Air Force, I certainly wouldn't be a lieutenant colonel. I certainly wouldn't be a physicist. I wouldn't have gone to the Air Force Academy. I wouldn't have gone to the Air Force Institute of Technology. Those things would not have happened if people like the Tuskegee Airmen hadn't proven themselves.
We're here, we're the first black outfit in the Army Air Corps, and we've got to do a good job so that other people who come along later will have an easier time of it than we have.
I'm very honored to say how proud I am and how much I love the Tuskegee Airmen and all those who have followed in their footsteps. There's generations of those from the 40s and 50s and beyond that have all walked in the same path and footsteps of the Tuskegee Airmen.
The 99th arrived in North Africa in April 1943 and was assigned to the 33rd Fighter Group, commanded by then Colonel William W. Momeyer. The unit took to the skies on June 2nd over the Italian island of Pantelleria, where it conducted dive bombing missions. During a B-25 medium bomber escort mission, Lieutenant Charles B. Hall shot down a Focke-Wulf 190, which was considered to be the backbone of the Luftwaffe's fighting force. This victory distinguished Hall as the first black fighter pilot to shoot down an enemy aircraft during World War II. And while much-deserved accolades were received, subsequent kills would prove to be elusive, thereby thrusting the 99th into the spotlight of criticism.
Commander was a colonel by the name of William Momeyer, and he did everything he could to harm the organization. And after it had been in combat for 90 days, said that it had failed its test in combat and should be removed from the combat theater. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Davis, who was the squadron commander at the time, was back in the United States getting ready to take the 332nd overseas. And he was brought into the Pentagon to defend the Tuskegee Airmen.
B.O. Davis came home in September to take over the 332nd Fighter Group. And while he was home, he was called to Washington to respond to this evaluation, which he did. He, item by item, took the whole evaluation that Momeyer had written and completely refuted every statement in there with data. This is false, and he was livid at the very thought of it, because everyone within higher command had accepted it at face value, and everyone approved and went right up to the top. The Hap Arnold himself, who even accepted it.
He was able to justify the continued existence of the 99th.
That's the best thing that ever happened. They hurt themselves when they sent that report forward to Arnold. They really hurt themselves. If that G3 evaluation had not been made, God knows what would have happened.
It was the McCloy Committee that let Benjamin Davis defend the organization. And the McCloy Committee and General Marshall decided that the claims that Momeyer had made were not true. This is an organization with great potential, and we're going to give it time. Momeyer's recommendation, which was accepted by all of the generals in Europe, without exception, and Hap Arnold, who was the commanding general of the Army Air Forces, was that the 99 should be removed from combat, given a non-combat role, and that the 332nd should not be formed, and the 477, which came later, the bomber outfit, was to be terminated too. And this was all stopped by the McCloy Committee.
Led by a man of unquestionable fortitude in the form of Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., the Tuskegee Airmen entered World War II as outcasts, shunned by those whom they had sworn to fight alongside as well as protect. Having now fended off the attempts by Momeyer and others to relegate it to bystander status for the remainder of World War II, the flying unit was reassigned to the 15th Air Force, removed from close air support operations, and thrust into the limelight of bomber escort missions.
Davis had several bases in Italy with the 332nd when AIAA, who had the Mediterranean Air Force, gave him the opportunity to become an escort instead of an air-to-ground organization, to be an escort organization. And that was the plum mission of the fighters in the United States Army Air Forces, and he grabbed the opportunity.
As Aker explained it to me, there had been 114 heavy bombers of those days with 11-man crews that had been lost in February, and they needed another fighter group.
for escort duty, and he asked me, "Do you want to do this?" And of course, it was like moving from a Jeep to a Cadillac.
As fate would have it, this turn of events upholds the often quoted adage that something good always eventually comes out of something seemingly bad, as the unit found a receptive command climate in the 15th Air Force.
In direct contrast to our reception by the 33rd, our reception by the 15th Fighter Command was warm, active, helpful, completely uncritical, friendly, complimentary.
In spite of their warm reception and feelings of acceptance by their new leadership, the 332nd would find a much harsher greeting on the aerial battlefield.
Why I'm so involved in this is because of the young Tuskegee Airmen that didn't come back.
We lost about 10 pilots in 10 days.
I'm thinking about Maceo Harris, kid that I idolized. That's why I wanted to go into pilot training. Maceo Harris lived up the street from me. And some of the guys had said that when they saw him go down, he was immaculately dressed. Scarf, flying boots, shine, jacket in order. In other words, he went down in the Mediterranean. I think he was like 20 or 21. His body was never recovered.
Well, we lost 5 men on that flight. One was shot down, Armour McDaniels. 2, Flight Officer Spears and Mitchell from 301st. Spears was having trouble with his plane. He crash landed on a field over which the Germans and the Russians were engaged in combat. He was captured by the Germans, and he was liberated 3 days later by the Russians and reunited with Mitchell. And the other 2, Ronald Reeves and Robert Robinson, 2 of my classmates and squadron mates in the 100th, were heard to say they were calling into the Rimini air terminal up in northern Italy. They said, "There's a field, let's go have a look." No trace was ever found of either plane or either man. The people from the Graves program who are finding missing folks found these 2 guys. I come to find out Reeves was buried in Rome, and Robinson was interred at Arlington Cemetery last October. All 5 of the men that went down from that Berlin mission are accounted for.
And then there are those whose stories are unbelievably tense, jaw-dropping, heartwarming, wonderful, and tragic all at once.
So I'm coming in on this locomotive, and I got it lit up like a Christmas tree. And the sides drop, and they start shooting back at me. They had guns on those box cars, and the sides drop. And every 5th gun is a tracer, and you can see it. And now the tracers are coming up. I mean, all I see is tracers coming up. And I'm shooting, and the tracers are coming up. I got it lit up like a Christmas tree, so I know my bullets are hitting. I'm waiting for it to blow. If I pull up my silhouette, they would have blown me out of the sky. So I just had to drive right in, hoping that the locomotive blows. And I'm saying, blow up, blow up, blow up. And just as I passed over, what happened? It blew. And I was caught in the explosion. My aircraft was very badly damaged. It only ran for a couple of minutes. And then that is where it hit me. It was so silent. And I'm thinking, here I am up in Germany, all alone. And I began to question, what the hell am I doing up here? There's a war going on up here.
Despite the significant number of losses as well as near misses, the men of the 332nd were able to maintain a steadfast focus on the larger goal to which they had all endeared themselves.
Combat was brand new. We had enough of it to know that you could get hurt. But I think we were all dominated much more by making a good showing.
The reason it was so important for the Tuskegee Airmen to prove themselves is because they were in a culture and a society that thought they couldn't do complex activities like flying. They thought that African Americans could only handle certain types of jobs, that could only process certain types of things mentally. And so to be able to prove leadership and the ability to do these jobs that others could do fine, that was a groundbreaking, game-changing, excellent achievement that they did that made the way for everybody else. They had to prove themselves.
Because the War Department did not believe that blacks had the intelligence to pilot aircraft, nor did the War Department believe that blacks had the bravery to command troops in the field. They believed that blacks were cowards, so they knew that they were fighting against this. Even though we had had a history of fighting for this country going back to the American Revolution with Crispus Attucks, all the way up through the U.S. colored troops in the Civil War, and on to World War II and beyond.
After we were in Italy a few months, the 99th was assigned to the 332nd, and so we had 4 fighter squadrons. And this was a unique arrangement because we were the only 4 fighter squadron group in the Air Force. The personnel were black, and so it would really be what we call the Black Air Force during World War II. And it probably will ultimately be the only Black Air Force that this country will have.
It was this merging of 4 fighter squadrons which would ultimately form one of the most successful fighter groups of World War II.
They realized that our bomber losses were heavy, thought we had enough guns on 17s and 24s to protect them, but that wasn't the case against the German Air Force. So 4 groups were moved from 12th Tactical Air Force to 15th Strategic Air Force. 332nd was one of them.
It is a widely held belief that it was during this mission shift from tactical to strategic protection of America's bombers that Colonel Benjamin O. Davis exerted his notorious ironclad will and discipline onto his newly formed organization.
The task was to stick with the bombers to help save American lives.
Our job was to escort and safeguard the bombers from enemy aircraft. And he said, you stay with the bombers. He said, if you leave the bombers running off after enemy aircraft, you're going to be court-martialed.
But I can remember when I first came in and Davis briefed us, he says, I've got one rule. Don't you ever leave a bomber and go off looking for personal victories. If you do, you can shoot down 10 airplanes. You come back, I'm going to court-martial you, and you'll never fly again. So our job was you protect those bombers. You get them home, you get them back so they can fly another day.
It is this steadfast commitment to sticking with and protecting the bombers that endeared the Tuskegee Airmen to both bomber crews and wing commanders alike, as they were performing their mission quite differently than was the norm for other fighter groups.
The group leader, in our case, did not do the way several group leaders did, namely, as soon as the bombers reached target area, they'd peel off and go looking for targets of opportunity. We didn't do that. If there are many cripples coming off the target area, we would assign an element, a couple of fighters, to escort that cripple to some base where you can land safely.
And people say, well, how come there was never a black ace in the World War II? Because that was never the mission of the 99th Fighter Squadron.
The other groups, they would allow one of the groups to go off and play games, chase for personal victories that leave a gap within the protection of the bombers, and they were getting in and shooting down bombers left and right.
We were sending bombers over with no fighter escort, and the sky would just be black with bombers. You couldn't miss one, because if you miss one bomber, you hit another one 100 feet away or something. And each bomber loss contained 12 to 15 crewmen. young men. If you made 25 missions, you were miraculously saved.
Now, if you are attacked, yes, you do jump them and you prevent them from shooting them down. But you don't go leave the bombers and go looking for trouble or looking for victories.
And that's precisely what the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II did. Abiding by Davis's strict guidelines and disciplined approach, they established such an impressive record of escort support that many of the bomber crews began to request that they be escorted to their mission target by what had then become and remains their most enduring moniker, the Red Tails.
We are the ones that kept the planes flying up in the air. My group was also the ones that painted the tails of those planes red, which was known as the Red Tails, so that the enemy, the Nazis, was recognize the Tuskegee Airmen called Red Tails.
They didn't even know who we were at first. And then they started calling us the Red Tail Angels because we wouldn't leave them. I can remember being on missions. We would come back. We were withdrawing the bombers out, and you would hear stragglers up there screaming, fighter protection, fighter protection. I got one engine out, another engine is acting up. And the flight leader would say, hey, anybody in the flight, how is your fuel level? 3 or 4 of you, you got some additional fuel, go back and find that guy. And we'd turn around, go back, find them, and bring them home. And that was not uncommon. We did that on many, many times. And this is where we got the name, the Red Tail Angels, because we stuck with them.
More than once, we fell behind the group after we had the bomb drop. And that's when the ME-109s would wait for you if you were out there by yourself. But we had Tuskegee Airmen who were not far from us. And as soon as we were by ourselves, one of the Red Tails was on each wing.
In spite of having taken on a more protective role, the 332nd proved themselves more than capable of being aggressive when the situation demanded it.
If the enemy fighter tried to penetrate an element or whatever was necessary to be dispatched, and it happened, my element was dispatched and got on the tail of a Focke-Wulf, and he made a turn that he shouldn't have, but it put him in my gun sights, and so that was the day that I had a victory.
We had some very successful period. July of 44, over a period of 18 days, we shot down 19 enemy fighters. Then, on 31 March and 1 April, we shot down 25.
Over Anzio, they shot down 15 airplanes, and there were no moves after that to get the Tuskegee Airmen out of combat.
Charge me with 10 who were stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more. Shoulder to shoulder, shoulder to shoulder, go as they go to the foe. There's nothing in this world can cause tomorrow stand. When stout-hearted men can stick together, man to man. I know you can make it.
Good morning. We hope you had the opportunity to enjoy learning about the legacy of the Red Tail Angels that made a contribution to our country, that fought against racism, that had the mindset of excellence, and together helped change the world. We are honored today to introduce you to Julian Patricia Patel. She is one of 20 Marian Anderson Society scholars. Marian Anderson was a legend. She was an opera singer who had a passion for the Tuskegee Airmen. She made a contribution that helped change the world. And so today, that is what it's about. It's about our tribute to our community, our country, and humanity. During the Red Tail Angel movie, you had an opportunity to hear from our Tuskegee Airman, Ted Lumpkin. Recently, Ted Lumpkin passed away from COVID-19, just shy of his 101st birthday. So on behalf of all of our legacy leaders, we wish to extend and salute to all of our Tuskegee Airmen, to our veterans, to our community and family, a Dr. Martin Luther King, as we stand in unity. And so we are honored to have Julian sing God Bless America, because after all, that is what the Red Tail Angels and Dr. Martin Luther King have in common. Julian? Julian, every time you sing, you open up heaven. All of our veterans, all of our family, we want to thank you so much for sharing your selfless talent with us today. And it is a special honor that you have joined us, for we know that Tuskegee Airman George Hardy and Marian Anderson went to the same high school in Philadelphia, South Philadelphia High School, and are both featured in the Hall of Fame. So thank you so much. Today carries forth all the legacy of our legends. Have a wonderful day, and we wish you much success with your Martin Luther King Community Day of Service at the Marian Anderson Society Historical Museum. Thank you. Well, good morning. We are so honored to welcome two of our legends, our trailblazers, red-tailed Tuskegee Airmen. Good morning to you, Lieutenant Colonel George Hardy. We welcome you. We are so honored for your presence with us today. And we're also honored to have Richard Bond with us, the son of Lieutenant Colonel Howard Bond, who also was a red-tail combat pilot. Today, we salute you. We salute all of the Tuskegee Airmen. And Lieutenant Colonel Hardy, I have to say, one of the things that you and I have talked about, and I've been so honored to sit at your feet and learn about our history, when you said that in 2007, when George Bush presented the Congressional Gold Medal, he said, for all of the salutes that you have not received, that he salutes you. And today, we all salute you, sir, for your presence of being with us.
Well,
Ladies
thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We are very honored to have you. So I want to just share very briefly with the audience, just do a brief introduction, because your history that both you share and Richard share, preserving the Tuskegee Airmen red tail, I think it's best coming from you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please meet Lieutenant Colonel George Hardy. He's retired Lieutenant Colonel from the U.S. Air Force, who in September of 1943 was assigned to the 320th College Training Detachment at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. His group was scheduled to take college-level courses at Tuskegee Institute for a period of 5 months. This training was cut short in the beginning of December as his group was transferred to the Tuskegee Airmen Airfield for aviation cadet training as part of Class 44-8. In September of 1944, Tuskegee Airman George E. Hardy graduated as a single-engine pilot and was commissioned as second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Good morning, sir, and welcome.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
We are honored to have you. There is so much history that you have shared. You shared the history of that Colonel Charles McGee is the oldest red-tailed air combat pilot, and you are the youngest Tuskegee Airman combat pilot at the wonderful and tender young age of 85. Could you share? 95. You're 95. You look 85, so that's where I got 85 from. But your actual age is 95. I hope I look as good as you when I get your age. Could you share with us your experience, as a red-tail pilot and your favorite plane? I know that you served in several wars. So could you share with us today?
Well, I served in 3 wars. World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. But in World War II, I took the exam when I was 17 and passed and went home until I turned 18, and then I entered the service. Graduated in September of 1944, and flew the the P-40 airplane, got 10 hours, then went to Waldoboro to fly the P-47 training and for combat. Then went overseas. Incidentally, while I was at Waldoboro, I drove an automobile for the first time. Then went overseas and switched to the P-51 flying over Europe in March and April 1945. And I was 19 years old when I was flying then. But it was a great experience. So I had a growing up experience. But the main thing is that the conditions in the service, racial segregation was so rigid then. Unfortunately, I stayed in the service for a full career, and I saw a complete change, where at one time, back in World War II, they wouldn't have a black officer supervising a white person But yet today I look up and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force is an Afro-American, General Brown. So we've come a long way.
Absolutely. And you're right. We have come a long way and we still have a long way to go. Could you share with us, how did the plane become known as the Red Tail?
Well, when the 99th went over, they flew P-40s and were 12th Air Force. But in the spring of 1944, the 332nd was over there also with 3 squadrons. And the 15th Air Force was losing a lot of bombers. So they had to get more fighter groups, and they picked the 332nd as one of them. And the 15th Air Force assigned colors to their tails of the different airplanes for identification purposes. If you're fighting Germans in the air, once the action's over, you want to join up with your own aircraft. And so each aircraft had a different color for the rudder of the airplane. But we had a lot of red paint. We painted the whole damn tail red instead of just the rudder. And you can see from greater distance. So we got called the Red Tails. But each color was assigned by the 15th Air Force. The spinner was also red. All airplane 15th Air Force had a red spinner. So that's how the color came from Air Force, 15th Air Force.
Wow, this is wonderful. And so, Richard, you are the son of Lieutenant Colonel Howard Lee Bond, who entered in the U.S. Army Air Corps as an aviation cadet in March of 1942. He completed pilot training at Tuskegee Army Airfield in November of 1942, Class 42-J-SE, and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. For his 16th month of combat in World War II, he was awarded, your father was awarded so many distinguished awards for his contribution to the world, to the Tuskegee Airmen, and helped change the history. One of the things that I saw in doing my research, I love research, when your father said that he loved his P-51 Mustang. And he didn't care about how it was made. What he wanted to know is this plane going to get me up in the air? Am I going to be able to fly in combat and come home safely? So would you share with us, we are so honored that you are joining us today. Would you share with us the legacy of your father, Lieutenant Colonel Howard Bond?
Thank you, Joy. And it's good to be with you. Dad was my father, also a lieutenant colonel, won the Distinguished Flying Cross, same as Doda Hardy. But Dad was there for 16 months. He flew 136 combat missions. I will make everybody, for comparison purposes, his white counterparts in combat only had to fly 50 missions, and then they were allowed to go home. For whatever reason, and you can guess what the reason is, the Tuskegee Airmen were not being replaced and therefore flew more than normal combat missions. Dad was part of the first replacement pilots. And that's why he ended up staying over there for 16 months, 136 combat mission, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal, and so on and so forth. And then once he returned, was allowed to return to the States, he went back to Tuskegee and was a flying instructor, and later became the director of all flying training at Tuskegee Army Airfield.
Wow, this is a historic day. And could you share with us again, how did we just saw the movie, The Red Tail Angels. How did they get the name Angels?
Mainly because, and even before, and it was alluded to, it was stated in the documentary that General B.O. Davis issued strict orders that you are not to leave the bombers. Their white counterparts were essentially covering the bombers and then would leave the bombers to go off and pursue enemy aircraft to get to be an ace. And if you become an ace, you know, you go back to your hometown, they'll make you the mayor, but or the governor or whatever. But there were 10 to 12 Americans in every one of those bombers, be it a B-17 or a B-24. And they were losing too many bombers, they were losing too many troops and too much treasure. And so they brought the 332nd. Benjamin O. Davis said, you stick with the bombers. And because the planes had red tails, even though many times the bomber pilots did not know they were black pilots, they saw the actions of these individuals that had red tails, and they knew they would stay with them and protect them. And because they flew over top and they had they called them, because they can identify them as red tails and because they wouldn't leave them and they would make sure they got back to base after their bombing missions, they called them the red-tailed angels. I will also throw in the fact that the Germans called them the red-tailed devils because they were that good at at fighting off the German aircraft to keep them away from the American bombers.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. This is amazing. So Lieutenant Colonel Hardy, you shared that you were in 3 wars. And so were you in tell us about your plane, because I understand that there were multiple planes that you flew.
Oh, yes. In World War II, I flew a P-51, just a single person in a plane. But I got out of the service, and when I went back in 48, integration took place. But I went into electronics for maintenance officer. And when I graduated, the Air Force had integrated. And I was shipped to Guam to the B-29 outfit, 4-engine bomber, as a maintenance officer. I was a maintenance officer, but also checked out in the B-29. And pretty soon I was put on a combat crew as a co-pilot. And the Korean War started, and I flew 45 missions in B-29 aircraft. Some of those missions were as long as 11 hours, flying from Okinawa to Korea. But then, over the years, I had a full career in the service. I went to the Institute of Technology and got 2 engineering degrees, one Bachelor of Science in Electrical and one a Master of Science in Systems Engineering. And had a good program in the Systems Command for 3.5 years. But then they needed a pilot for a new gunship, an obsolete airplane. They made a gunship out of it. And I had lots of hours in that airplane, so I was recalled and sent for training again as an aircraft commander, and went to Vietnam. I was lieutenant colonel, so they took me off the crew and made me, the airplanes were 2 forward operating locations, Udo in Thailand and Da Nang, in South Vietnam. And the squadron was at Phan Rang, but I became the commander at Udon for about 3 months of the detachment. And then I became the commander at Da Nang for the rest of my time over there. And I got 70 combat missions flying only at night, looking for trucks in the jungle, picking up trucks with infrared equipment. And I was a commander of the detachment. Now, the thing that I look at that is Afro-American, and all of my pilots were white. Look how things changed during the time of my period in the service. And I still go to the reunion with those pilots and who flew over there. And they're much younger than me, at least 20 years younger than me, but we still have a good time together. So,
wow.
Happened during the service.
Well, we are honored, and we are honored that you are here today, that you are sharing your history. And the important, as you talked about, was around STEM education and making sure that we transfer the knowledge to the next generation, because that is really what this is about, is to keep our country moving forward and to learn best practices and lessons learned. And so I would like to introduce you to 2 of our distinguished guests that would like to ask both you and also Richard Bond a question. And our first guest is Ernest Levert. Ernest Levert actually serves as one of my mentors, and I am honored that he is here with us today. He is known as a history maker, a trailblazer. He is a veteran, a very proud veteran. And so when we first connected with each other, and I was just doing a brief introduction. When you and Ernest started talking, I said, oh my goodness, this in itself is a movie. So Ernest Levert, he was born in 1915. On March the 15th. I'm trying to make you older here, Ernest, because your history is so rich. In 1954 in Cleveland, Ohio. He is a fellow at Lockheed Martin, and Ernest has really blessed us all. He works for Lockheed Martin in the Missile and Fire Control in Dallas, Texas, and he has really made a contribution as a history maker. He works in the production engineering department, where he functions as the corporate welding engineering and material joining subject matter expert. And I also want to share that Ernest will be retiring soon after 30 years of distinguished leadership in his role. He also serves as our NSBE Aerospace Chief Technology Officer. He makes sure that we stay on top of our game when it comes to technology excellence. And he's a history maker in reference to the International Space Station. So Ernest, welcome today. We're honored that you're here, and we'd like for you to ask your question now.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this wonderful program today. So as a Navy veteran, and we always have to prepare for our missions and our battles, my question is, what were your thoughts going through your mind as you prepared for your missions and actually doing battle, knowing that you may not return?
Well, this was George Hardy.
Yes,
I didn't think of not returning. You know, I was 19 years old in Europe, and geez, you always have a future ahead of you, and that's the reason they get people who are young. I never thought I wouldn't come back. That's where it is. And in all my missions, I always felt that way. And every time I took an airplane off, I was able to come back in 3 wars. So someone was looking out for me.
Outstanding. I thank you for Lieutenant Colonel and Richard Bond for being here today to support this event. As Dr. Joy mentioned, we had a great conversation last week and we really connected. And once again, I learned so much today that I would share your comments and your stories with my scouts, because many times when we're at camping, I'm a scoutmaster and they ask me a lot of questions. And so in our scouting room, there's an autographed picture of the Red Tails from the movie, and I had a couple pilots autograph that poster for me. So knowing that I met Lieutenant Colonel Hardy and Richard Bond, I'm honored to be here today. So thank you for the opportunity to ask the question, Dr. Joy.
You're welcome, and thank you. And so now I would like to introduce you to Jasnae Smith. I have the honor of being her mentor. She was just recently graduated from Lincoln University on the Dean's List, and as well as have had two degrees. One was her major was Bachelor of Science, and she had 2 degrees in reference to math. And so I know, Dr. Hardy, that's one of your common themes that you have around math. She also was NSBE Lincoln University president. And so she has really, her leadership skills and her role has really supported many of our college students as well as our pre-college students. And so now she's pursuing her PhD in aerospace engineering, as well as helping us form our women's program. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jasnae Smith.
Hi, everyone. I'm honored to be here. I have 2 questions, actually. My first question is for Tuskegee Airman George Hardy, which is, at the moment, what kind of impact did you think you were making, and have your thoughts on that changed since then?
Well, actually, when we were flying overseas, we didn't think about what impact we were making. We just wanted to survive and get back. But the thing is that when I went into service, race was such a problem. The Navy was absolutely segregated. You could only go as a mess attendant into the Navy, and they had no officers until the end of the war in World War II. And the Army, of course, was segregated too, and it was the Army in World War II. And everything was segregated, and wherever you went, things were segregated. And but we adjusted to it. We had to, our mission was to fly, and that's all we thought of, to be successful. And we were successful. We're so proud of that. And we think that caused a change because the Air Force was the first service to say they're going to integrate 3 months before the President Truman signed the executive order. And we thought that was a catalyst. And we thought we were the reason for that, because when Air Force was created in 1947, they moved them out and up from the Army and moved them up to a level with the Army. And a number of those officers at the top had been involved with the 15th Air Force, and they knew about the 332nd and Tuskegee Airmen. And almost immediately, they started thinking about integration, starting shortly after September 47. And in April, they said, we're going to integrate. And so we think we had an effect in that. And a major change when the military started integrating in 1949. And it's, today, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force is General Brown, Afro-American. And so you can't get any better than that, we think. There are changes, there are things, there are problems. We know there's still problems, there'll always be problems. But at least someone coming into the service can think of a full career, whether you're white or Afro-American. We think that's a big plus.
Thank you. It's amazing. My second question is for Mr. Richard Bond. What impacts? Oh,
incidentally, can I get back to one thing? When we talk about that, people think we're talking about men, but women are involved too. A lot of people don't realize that in the Navy and whatnot. And when they had the problem off the coast of Africa, the person running that 7-ship group was an Afro-American woman. She was an admiral. And since then, she's promoted. So women have made their way too, as far as the Afro-American women, as far as the military is concerned.
yes, thank you. My second question is for Mr. Richard Bond. So what impacts has your father's legacy had throughout your life?
Interesting question. The thing that I find unique, and it was true about the all Tuskegee Airmen, is that when we were growing up, we really didn't know the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, even though my father was actually a Tuskegee Airman. The thing that's interesting, during the war, the Tuskegee, what are known as the Tuskegee Airmen now, were known as the Red Tails. It wasn't until a book was written by Charles Francis about the Red Tails where he called them the Tuskegee Airmen, and that was in 1975. So I was already in high school. What turned out is that my oldest brother, who followed in my father's footsteps and became a pilot in the Air Force, the first day of pilot training for him, he was sitting in a room full of other aviation cadets for the Air Force, and most of which were from the Air Force Academy. And the instructor was going around the room asking people, you know, how did you get interested in flying? And my brother said, well, my father took me up in a T-33. And he said, wait a minute, your father flies? He says, yeah, he's a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, blah, blah, blah. He said, did your father get trained at Tuskegee? And he said, yeah. He said, your father's a Tuskegee Airman? My brothers and I did not know, never knew. And when my brother came home, he asked my father, why didn't you tell us you were a Tuskegee Airman? And he said, you never asked. And that was it. I mean, he saw it as just like I think all Tuskegee Airmen did, and many people that fought World War II, was that it was our job. We went, we did it, we wanted to succeed. They fought 2 wars. They fought against the Nazis and the Axis nations abroad, and they fought racism at home. And they just accepted the duty and did it. And so he's my mentor and role model, and I look at everything that I do in the same way. Do what you got to do, and use the Tuskegee Airmen as your role model, because they conquered incredible odds and incredible obstacles. The plan was that they don't succeed. They not only did they succeed, but they ended up being the best performers in World War II in terms of protecting bombers.
Well, this is amazing, and this is important as we share the history, and most important that we share accurate history, and that is what is occurring here today. And we want to really thank you so much for enlightening us and sharing with your time. And we would like to be able to. We have two questions that actually are coming from the Air Force Junior ROTC from the Oxford Hill High School. We've had the pleasure of speaking with Lieutenant Colonel Mark Branch, and he is a senior aerospace science instructor at the Junior ROTC. He is working with and mentoring two amazing cadets. And so the question that they have today, in the interest of time, and we are definitely going to all collectively, our whole panel, have a follow-up discussion with our Junior ROTC cadets. Their question is, what words of wisdom can you share that will help cadets stay connected to their educational excellence during this time of COVID-19? Lieutenant Colonel Hardy?
Okay. Well, the thing is, there are things you can do. For example, people work from home now because of the COVID and whatnot. They use a computer and they get together on meetings and whatnot. And the thing is, you've got to stay connected with people and find out what's going on and discuss what's happening every day, things like that. You've got to take an interest in things that are going on around you and connect with people on that. And the computer is an ideal thing, just like we're doing today. You know, we're not infecting each other with the virus or anything, but yet we're able to get together and talk and discuss things and figure out what's right and what's wrong. And so that helps quite a bit. The main thing is to keep contact with people. But the main, when I say the Tuskegee Airmen, we always strive to be better than we were yesterday. We always look for something to read, an education, something to do. And when they gave us something to do, you try to do it as best to the best of your ability. And that's it. Give your best, anything you have to do your best at it. And that's it.
That is important words of wisdoms, and we will definitely all write that down and make sure that every day that we operate in our zone of excellence. And thank you for sharing that. Richard?
I agree with, of course, with Dota Hardy. My father did lots of speaking engagements, like I'm sure Dota Hardy does as well. A lot to young people, and always stressing the importance of getting a good education and the importance of schooling. He used to focus on, and our chapter focuses on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, aviation, aeronautics, bunch of A's in there, and mathematics. But you know, not only is it important, but it is important to focus on significant career paths, because no matter what the situation, and I think the Tuskegee Airmen are a good example, is that things are going to change. Things are difficult. You think you got some obstacles to overcome with COVID. Think of what the Tuskegee Airmen had to go through with racism. But this is the new norm. And as Dota Hardy said, we've got, we've got technology that can help you. So don't be deterred by COVID-19. Use Zoom, use GoToMeeting. Use whatever it is you need to, because you must. It is of paramount importance that you get your education, and don't let anything or anybody deter you from doing that, so that you can be all you can be.
Well, thank you. And today, with all of the knowledge that you share with us, the passion, our tribute to community, country, and humanity, we want to thank you for taking the time out today and just enlightening us, because operating in the zone of excellence is important. And during COVID-19 period, we have an opportunity to stay together and to stay connected, and to think of all of the contributions that our red-tailed Tuskegee Airmen combat pilots made. And when you look at the red-tailed angels, and you combine the legacy and the wisdom that was shared here today, it is a source of inspiration that will help us continue to move forward as we meet all of the challenges, both in aviation, aerospace, health, homeland security. And we know that together, we all will make a difference. And Martin Luther King's quote, one of my famous quote is, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in time of convenience, but where he stands in time of challenge." So again, we would like to thank you. We know that there are a lot of additional questions that are in the chat. We promise that we will work together to answer all of your questions. We thank you for putting many of your questions in the chat. We also would like to invite you to please encourage you to look at the opportunity to participate in the community with different service learning, volunteering. So the AIAA has made a list of community service where you can volunteer this afternoon, where your contribution can make a difference in the lives of others. And then we invite you to please return back on time. We have an extraordinary panel when Lieutenant Colonel Hardy talked about the contribution women made in World War II. Well, we're going to hear an upcoming panel that's going to talk about the women contribution and their contribution that they made to help make a difference in the world and continue the legacy of excellence. So thank you so much for joining us. We invite you to please check out the community service. And this afternoon, we hope that you're a volunteer. We hope that our panel today, that you've learned so much. And we want to thank you on this day as we all together made a contribution to our country, to humanity, and to all of the multi-generations. And I have to share that it was one of our goals was from Lieutenant Colonel Hardy, age 94, all the way down to our Air Force Junior ROTC students that were 17 years old. And that's what it's about, transferring the knowledge so that we'll make a better day for others. God bless you, and thank you, and enjoy your day.
Well, welcome back to our program, a tribute to service, community, country, and humanity. A few minutes break is always good, but now it's time to start our next session. But before we do that, first, we greatly appreciate the Tuskegee Airmen discussion and Dr. Joy Spraggins. What a tremendous panel, and thank you to all of them for their participation. We will focus on service during this next panel discussion entitled Girls Can Fly, with 3 accomplished women from aerospace and aviation. These female trailblazers are wonderful and have much we can all learn from. And I'm especially interested in hearing from Marion, being a former Marshall Space Flight Center employee myself. But before we go on, I've just been told there's someone else who wants to join in our program right now. So zooming in from 400 kilometers or about 248 miles above Earth from onboard the International Space Station, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome NASA astronaut Victor Glover.
Hello everyone, it's Victor Glover here, checking in during my 6-month mission aboard the International Space Station. I'm excited to be joining you on this national holiday as we celebrate Martin Luther King. One of Dr. King's famous quotes is, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve." I believe that too. I hear that you've assembled a panel of women who exemplified Dr. King's call to service. One of those panelists is a colleague, a mentor, and a good friend of mine, Stephanie Wilson. Hi, Stephanie. This panel features 3 trailblazing Black women. It's such an impressive group, starting with NASA astronaut Stephanie Wilson, a veteran of 3 shuttle missions, along with Carol Hobson, a pilot from United Airlines, and Marion Johnson, who was a mathematician with Boeing during the Apollo era, which saw men get safely to and from the moon. Call all your daughters to come and listen to what these accomplished women have to say. Now, speaking of the moon, Stephanie and I were both honored to be a part of NASA's Artemis team that will soon return humanity to the moon. The crews that make these journeys are going to need the support of a lot of people, like the women on today's panel, to turn those dreams into a reality. In fact, living and working on another world is the definition of a team sport. On this important day of tribute to Dr. King's legacy, it makes sense for us to recognize the power of teamwork. The only way to overcome our greatest challenges, both on and off the earth, is by working together. My 22 years of public service has taught me this, that we must work together to do great and lasting things, and not just in spite of our differences, but strengthened by them. We need each other and our individual contributions. Back to Dr. King's quote, he also said that you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Let's spread love and grace as we serve together in our work both on and off the earth. I'd like to finish by congratulating AIAA and NSBE who are hosting this incredible program. Keep up your great work, shining a light on so many leaders who have not only risen to great heights, but have also brought us along with them.
Science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM education, as well as an aerospace and defense industry enthusiast. Her day job is focused on driving technological advancement as a system engineering manager with Northrop Grumman. I'm also glad she has been newly appointed as the Regional Deputy Director of Membership with the AIAA. Please welcome Ananga Daisy Fail.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this dynamic discussion. I really enjoyed that introduction from space. I hope you all did. That was a great surprise to see. Even up there, they're thinking about us on this day. Being passionate about aerospace and defense, I have to say I'm extremely excited to be joined by 3 of industry's leading women in aviation, space, exploration, and engineering. I hope everyone is inspired to promote technical innovation and industry entry and growth. Our panelists will give a brief overview of their career journey, and then I will engage in a dialogue. And I invite everyone here to put questions in the chat so that we can go over those. First off, you heard a mini introduction by astronaut Victor Glover, but we're going to move on to, I would like to introduce you to Carol Hobson, a first officer at United Airlines and author of a forthcoming historical fiction about Betsy Coleman. Carol, can you tell us a bit about your career journey?
Thank you, Ananga. Thank you so much. I must tell you all, I'm glad that we had a moment. I was incredibly, and I still am, moved by Victor Glover taking a moment from outer space to talk about how important it is for women to be in aerospace. I am completely moved. My name on the lips of someone who is in outer space. I am moved. And I thank you for that. Thank you for that surprise, and thank you for that introduction. My name is Carol Hobson. I proudly wear the uniform of a United Airlines pilot. But I've wanted this uniform since I was a little girl, and I never knew anyone who was Black, who was a woman, and who flew airplanes. When I was 34 years old, I decided that I was going to stop wishing and start doing. And I wound up quitting my job. I was a vice president for a Fortune 500 and a 100 company, and a girlfriend of mine who became my mentor, my friend, Captain Jenny Beatty, introduced me to Bessie Coleman. In the picture that you see right there, she's standing there looking fierce. And I will tell you that one of the saddest things in my life was that I've been to college, an Ivy League graduate school, and I didn't know that Bessie Coleman existed. When I found out who she was, my goal then became to stop thinking and stop wishing and start doing. A good friend of mine says that you put rocks in one hand and you wish in the other, and you see which one fills up first. Sometimes she says it a different way, but you get the point. When I learned who Bessie Coleman was, I knew that there were others who didn't know who she was. So if you go to the next slide, what I decided to do was to write a historical fiction about her. Now, I'm struggling with the title, and here's the reason. This woman is peripatetic, and when my editor said it to me, I had to turn off the keyboard on my phone so I could look up the word. And the word means many places, a follower of Aristotle. You just keep going and learning and learning and going in different places. And that's who she was. A Black woman who barnstormed this country, the equivalent of being outer space in the 1920s. She was a phenom. Those who follow in her footsteps have her to look up to. There's one more slide I'd like to share with you. This is probably one that you haven't seen. This is from the Los Angeles Times, January 28, 1923. The only one in the world. She was. Just as each of you is the only one in the world. I'd like to finish up my remarks because 2 minutes, I could go on for a much longer time, but I'll focus on this. I started out as a police reporter. And then from there, I moved to the National Football League, and from there to Foot Locker stores. I became the Vice President, Director of Training and Development, 145,000 associates, 4,500 stores. It was a wonderful job. But I was always sitting in the back of the airplane. The only one in the world. It's one of the titles I've been considering for this book. And my goal with the book is the following. Book, movie, because it is all cinematography. And I'd like to enroll 100 Black women in flight school. The organization, the Black Aerospace Professionals, is a remarkable organization. And they have helped me get to where I am. And we've started a flight school in Olive Branch, Mississippi. And it is a remarkable school. There's a whole group of Black women, Sisters of the Skies, and they'll help as part of OBAP, they will help to get some of the young women through. In the meantime, I'm sure we'll have more questions. But I thank you for this time. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm thrilled to hear from our other panelists. And this is a remarkable day. Thank you. And thank you most of all as well to AIAA. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. I'm very interested to read your book and learn more about your vision for getting girls to be pilots. That's very, very exciting. Next, we're going to move on to Mrs. Marion Lee Johnson, a mathematician, educator, and retired Boeing engineer who was critical to the Apollo Saturn V rocket and helping Neil Armstrong land on the moon. Mrs. Johnson, can you tell us a bit more about your career journey? You're on mute, sorry. Oh, there you go. We have you now.
Oh, okay. Very good. It's just such an amazing day. It's about to move me to tears already, and we're not through half of the program. But first, I would like to thank the AIAA and NSBE, this group, for having this amazing panel discussion. Right now, I'm just moved, and words are really being limited right now. I feel honored to be a part of the panel, to be with Carol and Stephanie, two amazing young women. They are truly an inspiration to all young people in aviation and aerospace, now and in the years to come. My name is Marion Lee Johnson, and they call me a hidden figure. My bio is included in the program information for your review. And when Mr. Glover's video took off, geez, I thought that was mine. But it was so good to see him and hear him express what it means to him on this Martin Luther King Day. But let me talk a little bit about things that are not on my bio. Much like Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, who were in the 2017 movie, Hidden Figures, I was in the background. It was decades before I even knew something like this was going on. These women were my predecessors who served as the brains. Let me just say that again. They served as the brains behind one of the greatest operations in history at that time. And that was the launch of John Glenn into orbit around the Earth on February 20th, 1962. A stunning achievement that restored the nation's confidence, turned around the space race, and galvanized the world. Of course, 5 years later, I began my career as an associate engineer at the Boeing Company in Huntsville, Alabama. Boeing was a leader in building the largest rocket ever built, the Apollo Saturn V. I was assigned to the Launch Systems branch at Boeing and worked on the NASA project with the legendary Wernher von Braun and Arthur Rudolph. They were the brains behind everything. My team members were professional, and they treated me with respect. And of course, as you saw in the Hidden Figures movie, running to the ladies' room outside of the building, I didn't have to go through any of that. Oh, how amazing, how truly grateful I was of that. I was responsible for preparing data inputs for simulation of vehicle piece impact trajectories. I was honored to receive significant commendations in March of 1969 for a perfect score of 20 successful mission runs in 20 attempts. Boeing also recognized me for my displaying of dedication, technical competence, and high standards of achievements in contributing to the lunar landing mission on July 20th. We can't forget that date. July 20th, 1969, where Neil Armstrong said, "That's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind." I was humbled to have my name enshrined in the Apollo Saturn V Roll of Honor. A copy of that historic roll is in the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Let me tell you a little bit about my childhood. My childhood was anchored in that old family tradition where values mattered. And they're still relevant today to motivate, mentor, and improve our young people. I grew up with humble beginnings in Savannah, Georgia. My mother worked as a nurse. My dad was a cement finisher. We had a little money, not a whole lot, but we were comfortable. But they instilled in us a rigid work ethic, deemed education critically important to our household. My 7th grade math teacher, Mr. Walter B. Simmons, he motivated me and inspired me to love mathematics. And he became my mentor. I worked hard to achieve what I did. I achieved valedictorian, driven with my studies. I was blessed with a partial scholarship, and I attended college, and my family paid for the rest. Following my 2-year mission with Boeing, NASA, I was employed at Pfizer Inc. and retired a project leader after 26 years of service. I later worked at the Branford Hall Career Institute, formerly known as the Chubb Institute, as a computer networking and security instructor, where I received the Award of Excellence for dedicated service and outstanding accomplishments. After retiring from Branford Hall, I've been giving lectures and speaking engagements at various schools, colleges, and universities around the country to motivate and inspire young people to pursue a career in STEM. Thank you. And I know I've spoken a while, but now
we needed it. We needed it, Mrs. Johnson. Your story is amazing, and I have so many more questions that I want to learn each part of those. Lastly, we have astronaut Stephanie Wilson, who is also an aerospace engineer. I already mentioned a NASA astronaut, a veteran of 3 space flights. Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yes, well, thank you. And I would also like to add my thanks to AIAA and to NSBE. And I would also like to say how honored I am to be among these esteemed panelists. I'm very excited to participate in the panel today and to hear everyone's story. And my story began in Massachusetts, where I grew up. I was born in Boston. I grew up in a small town in Western Mass and was very inspired by the night sky. In 8th grade, as part of a career assignment class, I was asked to interview someone who worked in an interesting career field. And at the time, I was interested in astronomy. I interviewed a local area college professor and was fascinated by his work. He had an opportunity to do research, to work with students, to travel for different astronomical events. And I thought that that would be a wonderful way to contribute as a STEM professional. Also, though, I had an interest in devices and understanding how components work. And I eventually decided to study engineering in college, went on to study engineering science at Harvard University, and then took my first job at Martin Marietta, the former Martin Marietta, and worked in the Loads and Dynamics group on the Titan IV launch vehicle. That was very exciting work. I had an opportunity to work as a member of as a team with other structural dynamicists. And then I made my way to graduate school at the University of Texas, studying aerospace engineering there, the control of large flexible spacecraft, and then went to work on at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the NASA center there in California, on the Galileo spacecraft. And from there, that is when I applied to become a member of the astronaut office. I applied 2 times, and so perhaps my theme for today might be perseverance. I applied the first time and received a rejection letter from NASA saying, thank you very much for your application. We have many wonderful and fine applicants for this year. Please consider resubmitting your application in a future year, which I did. And the next time that NASA had a call for astronauts, I put in my application and was very excited to receive an interview, a request to interview at the Johnson Space Center. And from there, I joined the astronaut class of 1996, working here at the Johnson Space Center. My 3 space flights aboard Space Shuttle Discovery were all assembly missions to assemble the International Space Station, the wonderful orbiting laboratory that we have where we're doing research. And you saw the clip from my colleague, Victor Glover, who is there now. He's a member of a 7-person crew that's living there 24 hours a day. They're completing their 6-day expedition, conducting research in biology and human physiology, and technology transfer, tech demonstration, and physical Earth and Earth and space science. So it's a wonderful opportunity to work at NASA and to participate in STEM and to, shall we say, have an out of the world experience. So thank you very much for this time to make some opening remarks, and I look forward to the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Stephanie. You know, each of you, as you were giving your story, I started to think of, you know, there's so many other things I want to learn. And so I think that everybody on the call today would really enjoy learning a little bit more about how you got to where you got. So I would like to explore how you came into your role, leveraging sponsorship and mentorship. What were some of those critical experiences that helped propel you forward? And Carol, could we start off with you?
Sure, that doggone mute button, you always got to find it. I'd love to start. I am absolutely positively thrilled to have listened to both ladies on this panel. They're pretty spectacular. I would say when you start talking about sponsorship and mentorship, there are some amazing things that happen when we partner and when we listen and when we tune in to what people share with us. So when I think about sponsorship, I think about all of the remarkable opportunities that I've had through the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. And I will say, I will sing their praises just as you would for NSBE. It has been my fraternity. It has been my sorority. What do I mean by that? So I quit my 6-figure-a-year job and I went to flight school full time. And I love this one sentence. And I went from making 6 figures a year to $17 an hour, and I've never been happier. Really? Yes, really. I was moving and grooving and everything was just falling into place. And then September 11th happened. Life is like that. This pandemic, that assault on the Capitol, George Floyd being murdered before our eyes. Things that are seminal things change things for us forever. And so for me, September 11th changed things forever. And what that meant was I had gotten married. We moved from Manhattan to New Jersey so that I could fly. And then there was no flying. There's no hiring. There was vapor, kind of nothing. And it causes you to retreat. And it's when things happen, right? When these seminal events happen, that you show your mettle, that your strength, that your fortitude, that you never, ever give up, that happens. And so for me, I had children, and my husband said to me, this is an opportunity not to be missed. Take this time in life, take this snapshot and reflect on it. And now's the time to have children. And the sponsorship, the mentorship that went to sponsorship, how that changed in my life was that I blinked and 14 years went by. And as that happened, my mentors in OBAP grew to be my sponsors almost in life. And so one of my mentors, Captain Albert Glenn, said to me, come down to Memphis. You keep talking about all these Black women and getting them into flight school. Stop talking and get down here, okay? He picked me up at the terminal. He said, hold out your hand. That's one of my favorite stories. And I held up my hand. I did what he said, because sometimes there's something to obedience. And as I held out my hand, he put in my hand 3 keys. One to his home, one to his pickup truck, and one to his airplane. What? The amount of trust that someone would put into my hand. And then he said this to me. I want you to go fly some of those young women whom you have been mentoring. Go out there and fly with them. I leave for India in the morning. So that's like, that's when you get the new piece of tech. And well, I guess I shouldn't hold up my old tech, but I'll hold it this way. You get the new piece of tech and there's no writing to follow. You got to go online to get your information about the tech. You've been cut, go do it. And he said to me, not only do I want you to fly with them, but I want you to take notes. I want you to learn, and then I want you to give it back to us. When I go to India, I'll be gone for 17 days. Go fly. Now, I will say, he checked on us every day. He did check every day. But that experience, that to me was where where mentorship evolved into sponsorship. And what I was to do with that was on me. And then I was able to take that trust and that experience and I like to use the term pixie dust to the young women whom I was mentoring. Now, here goes the next phase. It takes more than pixie dust to get 100 Black women enrolled in flight school. We can do it. We've sent people to the moon. We've sent them to outer space. We talked to Victor Glover from Space Today. We can do this. We need that community that I talked about. We need never give up. And we have that. And that's the service component of sponsorship. Sponsorship is, I don't let you go. There's another mentor of mine, a woman named Vanessa Blocknell Jameson. She's my friend, she's my sister, she's my mentor. And we served together in OBAP. First female leadership team. Phenomenal. Fun. I think that the lesson of never, ever, ever give up applies. And so I spent 14 years at home raising my kids. And then after that, stop adding them years up, y'all. After that, I went to go get my job as an airline pilot. And then from there, like a pull-up, like a chin-up to United Airlines. And I don't want to be alone. We have approximately at United Airlines, I believe we're 19 Black women. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough in the industry. It's not enough. And United has the most, and it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. But we, as a people, we'll do better. And it comes with service. It comes with work. Thanks for listening. I'm sure you'll have other questions. But while I have the moment, one of the things Victor said, and I wrote it down, is that he has a heart full of grace. What? Somebody in outer space has a heart full of grace. That's stunning to me. And I think it's grace that goes before each of us. And I'd like to use that as we go forward and we find 100 Black women to interest in STEM.
Thank you, Carol. You bring up a lot of thoughts along the lines of, I never heard it that way, transferring your sponsorship, the transfer between your sponsorship and mentorship, and I like how you said what you do with it is what comes next and what matters. Before we move on to the next question, I wanted to hear from one more person in terms of mentorship and sponsorship in your career. And Stephanie, would you mind commenting on that?
Oh, not at all. Thank you. And I would say that I have had the wonderful opportunity to benefit from having many mentors throughout my career. When I was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, I participated in a new employee mentoring program. Charlie Bell was my mentor there. Once I came here to Johnson Space Center, I've had many mentors in the astronaut office. And it is important, I found, to have mentors both inside one's home organization and then also outside. And it brings the perspective of being able to navigate and understand the home organization and the working of that internal organization, and then how it relates to the perspective of the larger company. And so for the work that we do here at Johnson Space Center, very integrated among the programs and projects, it's important to have both the perspective of my office and then how it relates to the other programs and projects and other organizations at the Johnson Space Center. So that has been very helpful to me over the years. And for sponsorship, I would say that early in my career, I was not aware of that as much. It was happening, but I was not necessarily aware that it was happening. And now as a branch chief, I have the opportunity to serve as a sponsor. I have the opportunity to advocate for people when they are not present or not part of the conversation. And I find that to be very rewarding, having the opportunity to advocate for someone, ensuring that they are able to gather the skills that they need to move on to the next level in their career. It's very important. Both mentorship and sponsorship go hand in hand and are very important, and have been important for me as I have transitioned throughout my career. And then it's also important to be able to do that for others. And I have enjoyed that opportunity. So thank you for the chance to answer the question.
Thank you, Stephanie. You really highlighted the importance of diversity and when you're trying to find your mentorship opportunities and sponsorship opportunities, just having those diverse perspectives. One of the things I want us to do is pivot a little bit. So, Mrs. Johnson, you gave us a very excellent detail of your career, and I want to tap into that a little bit more. So, one of the things I wanted to think about is as we build upon our experiences in driving our careers, for you particular, what was the turning point or the aha moment when you realized that you were a trailblazer?
How about 50 years later? That was my aha moment. I saw the previews of Hidden Figures on TV, and I thought, are they talking about me? And I just couldn't believe it, that they were portraying stuff on the big screen about the moon landing. I was just amazed. That was my aha moment. And finally, I got calls from my family, from my girls, and said, "Mom, don't we remember something about you working for NASA?" And I said, yes. Early on, I tried to tell you guys about it, but I guess there was no interest at that time. And of course, my oldest daughter said, "Mom, we need to talk to you. Can we put something on Facebook?" And at that time, technology, that type of technology was just not for me. And I told her no. And she was kind of sad. But my youngest daughter followed it up. And she said, "Mom, I'm coming home and I need for you to pull out everything, all your pictures and your everything, so I can see what's going on." And when she came in, she made a special trip home just to do that. And we pulled out all of the papers. I had everything in plastic covers that I had kept in my hutch over the years, and my special coins. And she said, "Mom, why is this not on the walls?" And I'm saying, well, at that time, I had a job to do. And that's what I did. And that's what I was focused on. But she said, we got to put this out on Facebook. Can we do it? And of course, I had to tell her no, since I had said no to my older daughter. And of course, my husband is always in the background. He knew what was going on. And she said, "May I talk to Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, you can talk to your dad." And of course, she twisted him around her little finger. And of course, he allowed some things to be put on Facebook. And after that, things just grew and grew and grew. I had my first speech at one of the churches. And after that ceremony, it was so, to me, it was so great. I was being recognized. I was being honored for the work that I had done. Geez, I felt just like Cookie in the movie, 2017, Hidden Figures. I mean, that was an aha moment. And I could continue with this and take it to our young people, take it to our young women who wanted to succeed in this area and who I wanted to succeed. Just to hear Carol and Stephanie is just bringing tears to my eyes. They had sponsorships at that time. I did not. I started out, I guess flying by the seat of my pants, but I had a mentor from the 7th grade. And he kept me going. He inspired me. And he said, they're going to need to have women in the field. And you are there, go get them. And that allowed me to pursue college and fortunately obtain a job at the Boeing company.
Can I jump in there right now? I can't let that go.
Yes.
First of all, I wrote down so many things you said. And your aha moment came years later. So I wrote down the word perspective. Perspective, right? So one of the lessons I'm learning from you is that doers do. Doers do. They don't look around and wait for other people to send them an invitation. They don't wait for, the spotlight. In fact, you run from it. I would rather no spotlight. The social media thing, I'm not crazy about it, but yet I do love the fact that you can connect to people. So June 15th, 1921, Bessie Coleman received her certificate in France, and embedded in that sentence is the sentence that she led to learn how to speak French. And that is remarkable. We are coming up to the centennial. I want my book published then.
Yes.
Because I want that story told then. That beautiful hutch behind you. There's story in there. Let them put it on Facebook, honey. I mean, let them put it on. Because you living beautiful legend, you. We need to learn. That's perspective. For me, perspective was hearing Victor Glover say my name, like he knows who I am. Talking to you, talking to Stephanie, talking to Nanga, talking to women about this field, the celebration that we're on an AIAA stage with Nancy leading the charge on this conversation about STEM and women, and how I didn't take my first flight lesson until I was 36 years old. I joined an airline at 50. So that's everything, right? That's women, that's the ageism.
Yes.
And then that mentorship goes to sponsorship, and that sponsorship is really amplified with champions. So at United Airlines, when I joined and started flying the 737, one of my instructors was just extraordinary. And his name was Captain Ray Evans. And he was my instructor. And what's known as your IOE instructor, the guy who takes you from the simulator to the real operational environment. His name was Captain Cleo Ratliff. These were extraordinary Black men who just literally took me under their wing. Sometimes they were gentle, sometimes not so much. But they were my champions. So mentor, sponsor, champion. Strength in that. And that, there's this wonderful song by Calvin Harris where he says, I'm a giant. Stand on my shoulders and tell me what you see. When we get to the selfless point that we want people on our shoulders, tell me what it is that you see in space. Stephanie Wilson, astronaut. Tell me what it is that you see, Marion Johnson, what you saw. Stand on my shoulders and tell me. That's when we pull others. That's when we lift and pull. Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to pull on the trailblazer thread again. I know that I like it when you said, Mrs. Johnson, you didn't know you were a trailblazer until afterwards. And so, Stephanie, one of the things I was thinking about, still going down this trailblazer theme, how did you transition or expand your scope in your role to be a living trailblazer, a living example?
And I was, so I am in awe of the conversation so far. It really is very moving and very thought-provoking and very humbling. And when I came into the astronaut office as a member of the class of 1996, I was very fortunate to be joined by two other African-American women, Joan Higginbotham and Yvonne Cagle, and very fortunate that we came in together and joining our class in total number of 44 people. and transitioning together through our initial training as we do as astronaut candidates, and then being able to focus, though, after the training on the technical work and being a member of a team. And so I found that really in order to be able to move along the path and to move through that moment is really to focus on the work at hand and to be sure to take advantage of opportunities that are presented, gather the technical skills that are required to do the work here at Johnson Space Center and be prepared for spaceflight was really the way to transition from the enormity of it all, and then being able to be prepared and to be placed and to contribute, to bring value to the organization, so that then, as Carol is saying, we can reach back and bring others along. We do our own part to wear the path and make the path visible for others so that others can find it and follow. And it's that whole process that enables us to continue and go forward.
What was your aha moment when you were like, I'm a trailblazer?
And it's interesting, I mentioned both Joan and Yvonne, and so for me, it was not necessarily the case that I felt that I was the trailblazer, but with the three of us together coming into the class, I felt that we were the next group, of course, after Dr. Mae Jemison, to come into the astronaut program and to be representatives. So I felt that I shared that trailblazing experience together with my colleagues.
Awesome. There's a lot of good meat here. And so one of the things that was mentioned in each of your bios is how your career changed a little bit. And so, Kara, briefly, can you tell us about your career transitions? You mentioned it, but what was that one thing that drove that transition in your career? And we have a lot of questions in the chat also about people who are inspired to be pilots, but they find it a little daunting because of the cost. And what recommendations do you have?
So I'll take the first part first, unpack that. I think a curiosity, a healthy curiosity, a pursuit of your curiosity is key to not only staving off Alzheimer's, but, right, because every time you engage and you do something different, your mind, it's like exercise for your mind. Every time you do that, and I don't say that lightly, I mean it. Every time you do something and you challenge your brain to accept something that's in your little spirit, and you go after that and you pursue it and you don't blink. You pursue it, you run after it as if your whole life depends on it. When you do that, there's a focus. There's a focus that is so laser that everything else around you, right, the noise, it's just that, it's noise. Your focus is on that target. And when you get that laser-like focus, it becomes almost like a guiding star, and there's almost anything can happen, and things happen. Relationships happen, children happen, family, money issues, school. Let's get right to that. All of those things, they are real factors. I would make light of none of them, and all of those are important. But just as in any emergency, we prioritize. And what's most important, that goal. If you say, this is something that I want to do, I started at the very bottom of my career and I saved a lot. Now, if you find yourself in the circumstance, oh my goodness, I've got college debt. I really want to do this, but I've got this, I've got that, I've got the other. I would submit to you that today, and I love how Stephanie talked about, it wasn't just she, but there were three. When you feel most alone, so many people, and that's why I said I don't criticize social media all the time. Jump on social media, not just a Kickstarter, but find scholarships. Many of us go out there and beg and borrow and get scholarships. And some of them go without applicants. That's an outrage. Hop online, ask Google any question, and pull up every scholarship. Apply for them. Try your best to parlay one into the other. Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals gives scholarships. Women in Aviation, they give scholarship. AOPA gives scholarships. I don't know about AIAA or NSBE, but I bet you one thing, if I needed it, I'd be looking. Make sure you tap your mentors. When I first started talking to Captain Glenn about this, he said, come down, let's figure it out. There are people who will help you problem solve. But if you want it, if you're laser focused, there are more resources today than ever before. Hop online, do your research. And then when you do that, when you're looking for a mentor, your mentor will find you. Confucius, when the pupil is ready, when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. And that's true because you surround yourself by what it is that you want to become. You have no choice but to become that.
Awesome.
Do the work and find those scholarships. You find them.
So talking about, we know what we want to do. We're laser focused. And one of the things I want to transition here, because we have a dynamic panel of technical women, is as women, our technical strength is sometimes challenged or overlooked. Has that happened to you? And how did you navigate that? And Stephanie, I would like to start with you on this.
Certainly, and that is a tricky question, and can be a deterrent. And Victor actually mentioned this a bit in his video. He talked about teamwork or the larger NASA team, and I am also a big fan of teamwork, and it is very helpful. And in particular, in this case, when perhaps an individual might be doubting someone else's skills or technical capability, that's an opportunity to leverage the strength of the team. So I commented earlier about kind of digging in and being able to be prepared technically and taking advantage of opportunities to prepare expertise and technical skill. And that brings value to the team. And when the team is strong and recognizes that contribution and respects it, then when difficulties arise about doubting technical expertise or capability, the team really can fortify that. And if things are directed perhaps not at the team member who has the technical expertise, team members can redirect, and that can be a framework within which people can work to better reinforce their technical skill. So I have found that teams and leveraging teams in that way has been a way to reinforce the representation of an organization of which I'm a member, or reinforce the technical expertise that I'm bringing to that particular discussion or resolution or technical problem that we're solving.
Okay. Mrs. Johnson, do you want to comment on that shortly?
Oh, just short. Can't be short. I have to thank Bowen for giving me the opportunity to work with the team, to hone my team building skills. And when the Apollo 5 started to run out of funds, and I wasn't quite ready for that yet because I was still sending money home to my parents. And I had to find another way. So I transitioned to computer science. I worked with Pfizer Inc. in New York. And the thing that I had to overcome is I had to learn a new programming language. No more Fortran. I said, wow, So the new programming language was COBOL. And COBOL was a language, that I could understand. It was just like English. I can work with this. So I went into a job training program and I came out on top and I was thrilled. I worked my way through. I never let anything stop me. I was eager and hungry to be out there. I wanted to make do. I wanted to make a mark, and I did. But as you go along and you obtain certain ranks, I became a project leader, a woman of color at that time, and I started having a little trouble. And one of my employees, I had about 9 employees working for me at that time, male and female. And one of my male employees thought that maybe he could get further ahead. And I'm saying to myself, is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm a Black woman? What is going on? And I never saw that until the end of that year when I received my review. My review was so low, I was almost in tears. That was the first I've always hit the ceiling. And I'm looking at my immediate boss at that time, and I looked at him and I said, I'm not signing this. And he said, well, you have to. No, I don't. I don't have to sign this. But I will take this with me and I will write you a rebuttal. I was sad when I left the office. I went back to my office, and of course, information was on the review that I could use. And I assembled all of my documentation. And you have to remember, documentation is key to whatever you do. I assembled all of my documentation on this individual. I went home. I had a pad with me. And on the train, my fingers were just running across the page. I was getting angry. I wasn't sad any longer. I was angry. I was writing my rebuttal. I came home. My husband took one look at me and he knew something was definitely off. And we put together this rebuttal, and I decided I was going to take the day off. But guess what? I received a call the next day from his boss. And he said, I understand, Ms. Johnson, that you are not satisfied with your review. And I told him I was not. I was taking the day so I could write a rebuttal. And he said, why don't you bring it in? And I have a secretary at your disposal. So that she could key this in. I get attachments to it. And as the secretary typed, she was in awe. She couldn't believe what she was reading because the review didn't make any sense. It had no substance. And so my immediate boss's boss, who was the department lead, said, we'll have a meeting. So as the rebuttal was completed, I took it to my boss. I said, our boss wants to see us. Let's have a meeting. And the look on his face told me everything I needed to see. So we had a meeting with his boss. And as all of the material, the evidence flow as to what my job was and what I was doing, his boss looked at him and said, is this true? He couldn't believe it. He said, "The meeting is over, Ms. Johnson. You go back to your office and I will touch base with you later." The next thing I knew, the young man who was in question, he came to my office and he said to me, "You have people in high places." And I said, "No, I know my job. The same way I tried to train you, you mishandled. You tried to deal with it on your own. You know, a little of that old backstabbing stuff." And at that moment, he was let go. And I take the bull by the horns. You have to make your mark. You have to understand your job is very important. And documentation is the key. Never forget to document. Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Documentation is important, and understand your job. We've come to the end of a very dynamic conversation, and I thank all of you here for sharing your story. And Dr. Dexter Johnson will be joining us here shortly to give some closing remarks on the program. And what I just wanted to let everybody, we got your advice, Mrs. Johnson, but Carol and also Stephanie, if there was one word you wanted everybody to walk away with as a final statement of what you need to do as we're navigating this industry, and then we'll turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Like me to go first?
Sure.
Be hungry.
Be hungry.
Be hungry.
Be hungry.
Stephanie?
And I would say it's more than one word: passionate pursuit with perseverance.
Passionate pursuit with perseverance. Be hungry, know your job, and document. With that, I truly thank you, ladies, for this wonderful discussion. And myself, I've been personally touched, and really, I'm amazed by your story. So much to learn. And so what I'm going to do right now is hand it over to Dr. Johnson, who is Loads and Dynamics Technical Fellow at NASA, and also our Partnerships Director within the NSBE Aerospace SIG, and he also has technical roles within AIAA. Dexter?
Thank you, Ananga. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
wow,
afternoon.
what an outstanding panel discussion.
Good afternoon.
I am so proud of my Trailblazer friends. They are truly amazing people who are women soaring upward and onward. Awesome job. I am so proud of you guys. I am Dr. Dexter Johnson, and I'm proud to be a long-standing member and leader within AIAA and NSBE. I hope you enjoyed today's program. I truly enjoyed our tribute to service. What a great success. You know, Dr. King said that not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great. Why? Because greatness is determined by service. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. It's funny, Victor actually shared that, and that was one of the quotes by Dr. King that really had stood out to me. And so we're obviously in sync with Dr. King's statement. So this event was a product of passionate collaboration and unity of purpose focused on service between AIAA, the NSBE Aerospace Special Interest Group, and other key contributors and supporters. We need to see our world, country, and community unite to serve one another peacefully. I now want to extend a heartfelt thanks to our organizations, sponsors, attendees, contributors, supporters, speakers, panelists, moderators, and the planning team. So thank you to AIAA and Dan Dumbacher, the Executive Director, to NSBE Aerospace Special Interest Group, Ananga Fale, Executive Director, Legacy Bridges STEM Academy Incorporated, Dr. Joy Spragan, CEO, to the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals for enabling Carol Hobson to be a part of today's session, and to Tennessee Garvey, my point of contact there. To the NASA Astronaut Appearance Office for allowing Stephanie Wilson to participate, Babette Klingon. Also to University of Texas at Dallas, and Dr. Jackie Long and Dr. Stephanie G. Adamstein. And to Ben's Chili Bowl. Thank you, Virginia Ali, who's co-founder with her late husband, Ben. What a wonderful session to open up our session today. And then, of course, our documented original Tuskegee Airmen, a part of the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. Thank you, Dr. Joy, for having them participate in today's program. And we're grateful for our sponsor of today's event, Lockheed Martin. And so to our guest speakers and panelists, Major General Charles F. Bolden Jr., General Lester Lyles, our Red Tail, George Hardy, Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force, retired, and our family member, the son of a documented original Tuskegee Airman, Richard Ball. Thank you. We had such a wonderful singing of God Bless America by Jillian Peartel. Thank you so much. And certainly to cap it off with a wonderful panel of women trailblazers, Carol Hobson, author, first officer with United Airlines, Marion Johnson, hidden figure and Boeing engineer, and Stephanie Wilson, who's a part of the Artemis astronaut team, could possibly be the first woman to actually step foot on the moon. And so lastly, I want to just thank the AIAA and NSBE Aerospace Special Interest Group MLK event planning team, Lexi Broxson, Samantha McGill, Dr. Jackie Long, Glendani Johnson, Ananga Fale, Dr. Joyce Spragans, myself, and many, many others. I just want to say thank you, and thank you. So as we bring this program to a close, our opportunity to serve remain open. I invite you to connect with AIAA, NSBE, Aerospace Special Interest Group, and our collaborators. A personal focus of mine in order to take action is encapsulated in the following statement: roar to soar. And that stands for root out all racism to see our aspirations realized. Let's ensure we all have a chance to fly high. So seek to serve. Don't miss the opportunity today to move from inspiration to perspiration to transformation. I implore you to be great and serve. Once again, Dr. King's sentiment is that everybody can be great because anybody can serve. Opportunities to serve are provided on the event registration site. There were some that was shown on the video at the break, but feel free to visit that site to be able to see what else you can be able to do on this day of service. Thank you for attending today's MLK Tribute to Service. Have a service-filled day. Thank you.